Welcome to Plat Valorant, episode 46. We've got some fantastic stuff to talk about this week because we just concluded the biggest tournament ever in Valorant.
Ever.
Just ever. The biggest tournament ever. Just period. Nothing else is coming after that. We've got the lovely SeanGares back on. I mean, he was on the very beginning of the co-streams that we did, spitting out some fiery takes, murdering my mouth and esophagus. And now he's here to atone for his sins. He doesn't realize, but he is here to atone for his sins.
Oh no, I've been bamboozled.
I want to start at this position, man. It's episode 46, and today is also the 1-year anniversary of Valorant overall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's today is the 1-year anniversary, which means that we missed out 6 episodes. Because we started when the game was released, didn't we? Or maybe even before. So I guess we just dodged some early episodes. We should be on number 52.
Do you guys count the back chats?
No. Those aren't true episodes. Otherwise, we'd be on like 100. I don't even know how many we've done of those.
It's because of all the co-streams. That's what it is, right? 100%.
Could be. I mean, we didn't do one last week, obviously, because we were doing a co-stream. If you're wondering, if you're a regular VOD viewer and you didn't realize that we were running live streams, we were doing co-streams constantly last week of Masters Reykjavik. The VODs are still available on the channel. They're in an unlisted playlist. You go to our channel, you click on the playlist tab, and then you find them. They're called live stream VODs. So if you're interested in catching any of those, you certainly can. I don't know whether you guys realized, maybe you didn't because you didn't even know it was the 1-year anniversary. Valorant is just announced a mobile game. They've announced that they are releasing on mobile as part of their 1-year anniversary. They said there's going to be like a big celebration event within the game as well. Are you going to, I know that Sean's a busy parent. Are you going to start picking up the game on mobile now?
Honestly, man, I'll probably download it. Let's be real. Like, I'll probably play it. It'll be really cool. I've never had the chance to do this for a game that I play, so I want to try it out. Yeah.
With all the exclusive skins, everybody's gonna download. I guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not
exclusive skins.
Hey, you already know there's gonna be exclusive skins to try to get you to download that. 100%. 100%.
Okay, I'll play a little bit.
Why you didn't get that leak on the official broadcast? Like, I don't know.
How good do you think this mobile game will be? How easily does a game like Valorant translate to a mobile experience?
I feel like that's a question I cannot answer because I'm not a mobile gamer, and I don't even know what makes a mobile game good.
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Anyone here a mobile gamer?
Because like...
No? Okay, all right. Just speaking out of our asses.
Silence.
Yeah.
I mean...
I casted a Fortnite mobile event one time, and yeah, no, it's completely different. And I don't know. I think that a lot of people who grew up on tablets and phones, like from the get-go, and are playing all these mobile games, like straight up.
Let's read that out.
Oh yeah. I think that they will have a different, like 100% a different experience than some of us will have. Because like when I play a phone game that's like an FPS or a BR or something like that, it just doesn't, like, I can't do the controls. I just can't at all. But I think it could work. I think it'll be interesting. Like Wild Rift released, and that one's working out really well. Obviously, that's completely different, but they've made attempts to make shooters like actually accessible. No matter like how hard you might think it is to aim, there's aim assist. There's all sorts of really easy, features that makes it really accessible.
Yeah, I mean, the closest analogies I can think of are Fortnite and COD Mobile as well, is the other big one that springs to mind.
Sure.
Oh yeah, PUBG, sure.
How is building in Fortnite? Like, how does that feel?
Dude, people are cracked. I mean, there's
in
some
mobile,
people, who are literally like the same as people who are on PC in some extent. Obviously not like everybody, but the top of the top can be insane.
It just feels so impossible for a boomer like me to be good on the mobile Valorant version.
Yeah. All right. The other part of this as well is a lot of the hardcore community that only cares about PC. For some reason, they fucking hate it whenever people bring up the idea of there being like a mobile version of a game. I think it's because in their heads, it's like it steals developer time away from stuff they care about. I think that's the only reason I can think of that people are so vehemently against their game becoming mobile. And even in these kind of releases, a lot of people are positive, but then there's some who are like, why are they doing this? It's not going to be good. I hope they don't make an esport about this, stuff like that. What would you say to those kind of people?
I
just think there's a lot of developers doing a lot of different things, right? Sorry, Wyatt.
Oh no,
go ahead.
No, go on. I was about to make the same point. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different categories. The same people that, you know, when there's a new map released or a new agent released or a new ability worked on, they always care about the specific thing that they want changed. But the truth of the matter is Riot has a massive list of developers, it appears, that are just working on so many different projects, and you love to see it because they have so much passion in the growth of the game, and eventually they probably will work on whatever issue you think is, you know, a massive problem. I just think it's just kind of what flows in line.
I have 2 points, I think. Number one, like, grow up and see the potential for mobile games and how good it is for the game, no matter what. Yeah. Because you release this on mobile, all of a sudden it's you know, so many players coming in, and just like, it's ridiculous the amount of numbers that mobile industry is actually generating. Like, straight up. I don't know if you guys know the game Free Fire. It's like really popular in Brazil and India and stuff like that. Yeah, Garena. That thing, they have a world champion series. It's an esport, and they had 5 million concurrent viewers this weekend. 5 million because it's so popular in these emerging regions like Brazil, Valorant, like SCA and stuff like that. Like, I mean, in comparison, yeah, Valorant's a dead game, to be honest. And then the second thing is, I do kind of get where they're coming from, because once you launch as a mobile game, the devs now have to think, like, even if they can split the dev time between whatever, and we're still getting the same amount of attention, they do have to think about the new agent and how it applies to mobile, right? If it's not something that will be good on mobile, then maybe they will rethink it, even though it might be good on, you know, PC, which kind of hurts a little bit, but I think the benefits are just way overwhelming.
Also, with what you're saying about Fortnite, with people being able to build, I mean, that system is so complex. It is more complex, I think, the Fortnite building system than any agent that you could think of in Valorant. I like the amount of possibilities, the way you have to edit, the speed at which you have to do it to be able to outbuild somebody else. I mean, that is ridiculous. If you can pull off that in a mobile game, you can pull off Astra or even a more cracked out version of Astra, something like that. I don't feel like that's too limiting, but also, the fuck do I know? I don't play mobile games, so I'm just straight out of my anus.
Exactly, but that is the problem with so much of this talk, is that it's not coming from people who actually play mobile games. It is people who exclusively don't play mobile games that are either upset about it and not weighing in the overwhelming positives that have already been spoken to, but also just not understanding what mobile players even necessarily want in a game, or how it should be developed, etc., for that platform.
Why am I watching an Argentinian football player run around in apocalypse?
What are the negatives to this? What are the negatives to Valorant Mobile? Are there any? I can't even think of any.
I mean, I think
it makes the game bigger.
I mean, I think it's what Balla just said. If they feel that they have to not do something because it would not work on mobile.
Which, by the way, you wouldn't even know, because they wouldn't do it, and therefore you wouldn't know what they had done.
Okay.
So release the new agent and then also put in the patch notes, well, we were going to give her this ability, but it's not really
So when Valorant Mobile has like 9 million viewers in a year, and PC Valorant has like stuck at 1 million, our game just fades away.
Mobile
gamers take over.
It's kind of interesting though, because I mean, if we want to go down that potential dark avenue, that is somewhat similar to what's happening with Call of Duty right now. CDL is getting really poor viewership, whereas Warzone and COD Mobile is booming on like small platforms. Now that's like comparing casual to esports viewership, because as far as I'm aware, there aren't like major esports tournaments going on for Warzone and COD Mobile at the moment on the same level as CDL, but I could be wrong there because I don't follow the COD scene massively. But I know that those elements of the game are much more popular than the actual like hardcore PC elements of the game. I just don't think that's going to happen with Valorant though, because COD inherently was marketed casually and was picked up, had a massive console player base, that kind of stuff. That isn't the case with Valorant. It's captured a hardcore audience at its core and is now trying to branch out to be more casual focused. So I don't think it's comparable, but who knows?
I don't think in Valorant, but I do think that people who are like freaking out about mobile games and stuff like that and wondering like why are they putting so much effort 10 years down the line, mobile games are going to be bigger than any game that we play, like bar none. I guarantee this.
Are they already?
Probably.
I
think
know.
another one of the things, another aspect of this discussion is that a lot of the people commenting on this, I think, are from the United States and don't understand how big mobile games are in other regions of the world.
Yeah, Southeast Asia and South America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can play them on a phone.
Yeah.
Big difference from being in the United States and mom got you a PC.
Yeah.
I'm seriously.
Yeah, it's actually like 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
Times. Yeah. Okay. The other thing that they released in this article as well is that the monthly active user base for Valorant was announced at 14 million, which I don't think we've ever had a number released before.
I don't think so.
I had some data trickled to me in prior months that was very similar. It was like 12 a couple of months ago. So I feel fairly confident about the numbers that were reported there. I don't know whether they've come from an official Riot source, because everywhere that I've seen is just reporting on, apparently Riot officially said it. So I don't know where the official source was from, but everybody seems to be reporting the same number, so I assume it's similar. But yeah, 14 million monthly active users. That puts it on a bigger note than Overwatch right now, which the previous number they released was 10 million monthly active users. That puts it bigger than, I believe, Dota 2 as well, which was sat somewhere between 10 and 12. And it puts it, I think, roughly at half the size of CSGO currently in terms of monthly active users. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Sean, I'm going to ask you first because you come directly from being a player that was very heavily invested in the health and growth of CS. Do you feel like this is a good, this is good for 1 year in?
So I didn't know the whole CS thing. I've never seen the numbers presented in this way. I look at like the Steam stats or whatever on the page and just like daily concurrence. But if what you said is true, it's like half of CSGO's concurrence. I think that is an insane trajectory. Like passing those other games up that you mentioned, Overwatch already, like it's incredible. And it just goes to show how much work has gone into this game and the methods they've used to market it, like going even down to the co-streams and allowing like a stream for casual viewers and like really detailed like FPS viewers and like just like chill entertainment viewers. And there's just they've thought through everything and they've done a really, really good job. And you can see they're still going down that same pathway now with the mobile thing coming. So I am mega optimistic on how Riot is handling Valorant and where it's trajecting towards. Like, I think it's inevitable that it's going to keep growing.
Yeah, I feel a very similar way.
Yeah.
I think the game is being marketed very well. And
just pure hopium
at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's only going up. At least that has been the trajectory so far.
Yeah, it does appear to be. Okay.
It's crazy that it's already like this big without so many different things that you can think of. Like there's no replay mode yet. There's no 5v5 mode that they've been hinting at forever. Like there's so many things that you still could want or ask for, and it's already still growing massively. I don't know.
Sorry, what do you mean by 5v5? Because as far as I'm aware, there is a 5v5 mode. In fact, most modes are 5v5.
I mean, organized 5v5 with.
Oh, right. You mean You mean like group play within the game. Like this is purely for 5 stats.
I consider it 5 fucking unique plebs. Like.
Sorry, I really was too dumb to be able to pick up on that. I really thought that you had like misspoken and you meant like 3v3 or something.
Yeah. I could see how you'd be confused, but
yeah. Okay.
What do you guys think they've done bad? Like, I think they've done everything right, even from like the snowball fight thing to the microtransactions with the skins. Everything is great. The map additions, the agent additions, listening to the community if an agent's too like overbuffed at a time and they'll nerf that agent. Like, they're doing a great job. Even the LAN was just phenomenal. But we'll get to that soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, everything that they've been doing is good. I think, though, that I still think if you compare the game to some of its AAA competitors, that there are some ways in which it doesn't have as much depth in terms of like game modes that you can jump into or custom servers where you can do a ton of different stuff or having like a really active community built aspect. I think that there's still areas where the game can flesh out, but they started with a core product that was excellent, and they're iterating on top of that, and I don't mind that model in the slightest. I think it's still good as long as they continue adding to it, which they have been doing so far, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I actually do want to see more of, and I thought it was very cool to see during the tournament, was them reveal the short towards the end.
More lore.
I want to see more lore and like comics, things that the casual audience who are interested in that side of the game. I mean, there's a massive side of that for Overwatch can latch onto and get interested in.
Speaking about the lore, I didn't want to go on this tangent, but I feel like I have to just for a moment.
Oh no!
The fuck are there 2 Earths? What the fuck is going on here?
It's like
they're smoking some hot crack. What is going on?
It's like it's like TF2. It's like red versus blue, heavy versus heavy. But is this Phoenix versus Phoenix?
And this is their way of explaining why there's a Phoenix on both sides. Is that there's 2 worlds, both of which are fighting over the same amount of Radianite? Is that what I was supposed to come away from this short?
Do you really want me to just drop some bombs here? Because I'm deep in the lore lately.
Drop them, Sean.
Feel it all.
So what I heard on Twitter is that it's the Mirrorverse, right? And that Killjoy was in the lab and she created the spike to get the Radiant because in the future or something they don't have enough Radiant. I don't know, some kind of crazy nonsense. So that's why they're the same agents. It's just like a Mirrorverse.
Right. So what, they accidentally created the Mirrorverse when the Radianite popped off or something?
Yeah, I don't know that deep, man. I just know the surface level stuff.
See, when this happened, when this short released, I thought this was a new agent teaser, and it was somebody who could copy the abilities of an agent on the opposite team. And I was so excited because when I saw this scene, I thought this Phoenix was about to reveal that he was actually someone else in disguise, and it was a concept of a character where, like, at the beginning of each round, you can pick one agent on the other team to duplicate, and you become that agent. So it becomes very difficult to tell what kind of utility is coming at you because they have like a shapeshifter on their team. You know? I thought that was what was going to happen.
No.
I think that sounds like a fucking awesome idea for an agent, but yeah. Yeah, you don't want the potential for like double Killjoy.
I feel like that might not be balanced. I just
check.
Maybe not.
I posted in the live chat channel. If you guys want to see?
Maybe not.
Maybe you can only take the abilities of a player you kill. So like every time you kill someone, you take their full abilities.
See, I like that.
So it's like Reyna, you know?
Yeah, you shouldn't be able to just start with whatever you want.
Okay.
That's crazy. Just mix in a defensive round where you have 2 ciphers holding down A.
Yeah, okay.
Just 4 trips.
All right, it needs some iteration, all right? It needs some iteration. I'll send it to the devs and we'll work on it a bit. The other part to this, with the 14 million monthly active users, Valorant going mobile, all of the trajectory looking good. What the... Okay. Oh, wait, okay. Before we move on, this is a thread of someone that actually interviewed the devs and was asking the questions. Is this where you got your bombs from, Sean?
Yes, this is it. I follow a lot of these lore fanatics. I love it. I've never had it in my game, so I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, any lore that they built around CSGO would just be too dark. Like actual... It would actually be awful. Okay, so the Mirrorverse theory is confirmed. The spike originated from the mirrored Earth invented by mirrored Killjoy. And their Earth is out of Radianite. I see. So Killjoy is seeing the spike for the first time, so they haven't invented they're behind the times. They are behind the times. I suspect it has something to do with First Light, Omen's split. What? Oh, so did someone tear Omen in 2?
Omen, no. So Omen was actually an octopus. This is where I kind of lose you guys, okay? So when you put that octopus gun buddy on Omen's USP, it changes colors. It only for his USP or his ghost. I'm sorry, his ghost. It does that for no one else. And also, there's like all this nonsense lore about him being an octopus, and then he had some Radianite, and then he turned into Omen. I don't know.
He speaks, Sean.
Yes, I don't know, man.
Yeah, but the
Radianite. I like it. All I know is that I like the octopus lore.
Okay, I mean, we are getting lost in a hole here. I'm I'm gonna desperately try and dig us out because this is
no.
absolute madness. Okay. Like I said, the other part of the positivity surrounding Valorant at the moment is that the viewership for Masters 2 Reykjavik was unbelievable. I don't really know anybody who is seriously into esports who was projecting over 1 million views for Reykjavik. I think a lot of people were going towards like 500, maybe 750. I don't think anyone had the expectation of over 1 million because that's getting into like serious tier 1 esport within its very first major LAN. That is, to me, absolutely bonkers that we managed to reach that.
Yeah,
I
don't.
totally
I
agree.
mean, I didn't expect it. I don't even know. I don't know what to say about it. It's remarkable. But I think it's to some extent a testament to how the game has been something we talked about before, just it being headed in this mainstream direction.
Valorant TikToks.
Where it's just, the TikTokers are TikToking about it. Yeah. they're posting TikToks about TenZ.
And Arten is trending on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah. Genuinely. But that like times 10, like when there's like 60,000 tweets about TenZ after a match, like a bit hard to ignore. You know? You just get sucked into it.
I
think it's so impressive.
I thought we could break 1 million.
Oh, really, Balla?
Yeah, I did before the event. I thought we could break 1 million, not based off of anything. I'm not like projecting with the fucking. I'm not like fucking. We're gonna get 1 million because of all the viewership that we saw like before. No, I didn't know anything like that. I just like I had a good feeling, and once we started, and it was like 600K or whatever for the opening matches, and then and then it started sinking. I was like, oh fuck, we're not gonna get 1 million, but this is still good. It was the grand finals that boosted it back up, which to me, obviously, it's gonna happen. There's gonna be a viewership boost for grand finals, but that was a massive boost.
It was, yeah.
So I honestly don't understand how we broke it, but I'm fucking happy about it.
I assume it was because we had more co-streamers all together for the finals rather than at any other point during a tournament. I think it's very natural for a tournament to be better at the beginning and at the end and slump in the middle. That happens for every tournament. Happens for something as extended as the Overwatch League as well. Day one, big viewership, everyone's hyped. Okay, trickle down. Oh, it's the end, it's the finals. That's the shit that really matters. Everyone tunes back in for that as well. But I think the massive difference in viewership from like 600K, which was already better than I thought it would be for opening day, to 1 million, I assume is because all the co-streamers were there and doing it at the exact same time.
Yeah, I agree with Wyatt. I'm at like a loss for words. I don't even know what to think about it. I never expected it to be this big, this quick. Like, getting the players in the game is one thing, but getting them to watch the esport is another. And that just goes to show it's easily digestible content. And that's very, very good for an esport, right? Like that's what made CS so popular. It's just 5v5. Either you just kill everyone on the other team, they kill you, or you plant the bomb, or they plant the bomb, and the defuse happens. It's very easy. First one to 16 wins. It's the same thing in Valorant. It's very easy to digest. Even if you have very little information about the game, you can still kind of have an idea of what's going on. Whereas if I don't know what's going on, like League of Legends and Dota to this day, I'm not gonna lie. Like I just watch it for the hype, kind of. So I think that helps a lot too. But like you said, the co-streams are sick.
Yeah.
We also appreciate that we did this with no drops. Every other like major event that breaks 1 million or whatever, usually there's some sort of in-game incentive to watching it. This
that's
had
a good point.
No drops.
Man.
That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, people just actually enjoy watching.
That's
think
crazy.
Well, it's not. The thing is, as well, drops are always kind of talked about as if you're luring in people and getting them to stay purely because of the drops. Drops normally get people into the stream, and then how good the stream is keeps them there. So that to me is really interesting, that there was no added incentive to tune in the first place. That they did well enough with the marketing in the game and making it seem cool enough and advertising the game to a hardcore enough demographic that you just get this natural excitement to watch.
I mean, I think it also, if you have any inkling as to what's happening in the Valorant scene, there are just so many natural storylines and player personalities and reasons to tune in that if you're just around it a little bit, and to this tournament specifically, the NA versus EU final seeing the regions clash for the first time. There's just so much natural story building that has happened since the game's beginning that led to that point that there is just so much of a reason to tune in.
Also, North America being good, I think, really attracted people too. Like anybody who's just a casual, even if you're a casual League fan and you're just huffing the copium of North America, just the knowledge, just simply Tyler Erzberger tweeting every 30 minutes that NA is good, holy shit, is just naturally going to like spread this excitement of we as a collective have something to be proud of here. I want to watch this game because I want to be proud, which I think that really does drive something. I think that's one of the reasons why the finals in particular had a lot more viewership.
Yeah, definitely.
What does this say about... I've seen people asking these questions. Oh, well, maybe Berlin will drop off, though, or maybe Champions will drop off because this was the first ever regional LAN. It has something that you can't ever offer again in Valorant. Do you think that this is a trend that can be continued, that this, if you plotted it on a graph, we're just going to keep going straight upwards towards Berlin and towards Champions? Or is there going to be some kind of plateauing? What's your feel?
I actually do think that it's going to continue to go up. It probably won't be as stark an increase as this tournament was to the regional finals or regional tournament viewership.
Was 350K, I think, was what we reached for NA finals, I believe, for Champions, which was the highest as yet in Valorant, and then this got over 1 million, so times 3.
Yeah, and especially if you factor in the viewership for the other smaller regions and what they were still getting here. I mean, matches between minor regions were still getting like 450 plus K.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an insane increase for some of those regions. Minor regions like Europe.
Well, yeah.
Their struggling viewership, it really went up. But I think that by Berlin, it will still continue to go up. Probably not as big of an increase, but I think that one of the main things Valorant has going for it is that when you do watch it, it is a great viewing experience. The players are interesting, and there are natural storylines. There are reasons to continue to watch that have just come naturally. Like I think Valorant, if you want to go all the way back to the beginning, competitively, it started really slow, and for a long time, for the initial like few months, it was very slow, and then it started to pick up around like FaZe Invitational time.
Sure.
And then even after that, there was a lull for a bit, and I think a lot of people were questioning where it would go because average match viewership in NA, there was a time where it was like 20K or less. But at this point, I think that it's just been exposed to enough people that it is just an enjoyable viewing experience. And again, it has come, I think, pretty naturally. There's been some excellent marketing behind it, but at the same time, how much do you need to market some of this shit? I mean, the rivalries have just created themselves. You know, the stories have created themselves, and that's invaluable. I mean, that you just don't see it in other scenes, at least in my experience, to this same extent.
Yeah,
it's just entertaining, and it's not trying too hard to be.
Yeah. It's always had natural storylines. I mean, back from like the TSM Sentinels rivalry as well, that drove a lot of early interest in North America. And then just I don't know. There's just something about Valorant players where they're very personable compared to a lot of other esports that I've been involved in. Normally you have to kind of like drag these narratives out, but they seem to just spontaneously occur in Valorant.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at Sentinels as a team. They have so many crazy storylines between like all their players and what they do for their scene, the personalities. Like, they're so unique, and I feel like all the teams are like this. Like Boaster had to. I loved watching Boaster do these post-game dances and stuff, and pre-game walkouts. The shoulder content created by Riot surely helped. Like the lack of significant tech delays, like I've seen in past CS:GO events. Like they just. Everything was well done, and everything looks really good for the esports scene. Yeah,
I mean, there were a lot of tech delay, also, Sean.
There was, but I mean, CS has tons of tech delays. This was like nothing compared to that, and their first LAN. I mean, it was gonna happen. I think. I don't know.
This was when they sent version 1 home.
So good. It's so good.
They gave him the airport treatment.
Bear in mind as well, I mean, in Berlin, when there's going to be more spots, didn't even have a Turkish team of this one. That's a whole lot of viewers to stack on top as well.
Ooh.
I mean, if a Turkish team is at Berlin, that's probably like plus 200K. I mean,
yeah.
The Turkish stream alone when they were in the EU qualifier was like 160 at some point I saw, maybe higher.
I mean, that's assuming that they didn't tune in for this event as well.
I'm sure they did to some extent, but it's not to the level that
probably
it would have happened if there was a team there.
Yeah.
And also, I think, crucially, now that the teams have met on the world stage and the metas between regions have been exposed to each other in a direct way, and at least in this current meta now, I think it's pretty understood what the best agents are and what a good style is to play. Other regions are going to be way stronger coming into Berlin, and I think also being exposed to the world stage, some of these teams that have been a bit complacent are going to be way hungrier. And we're already seeing right now so many roster moves happening in EU, NA, Brazil.
Yeah. Korea as well.
Korea as well. Yeah, I mean, Vision Strikers already made some moves. It's going to be even more competitive, I think. You're not going to see as much of a difference between some of the teams we saw in Iceland, in Berlin, because every team, or rather every region, the teams are trying to make super teams to get there now.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I think by champions we could be at 1.5 million viewers.
By champions,
yeah. Like I think honestly, 2 million is not out of the realm of possibility. I really think that with drops, with the same level of influence on co-streams, and the end of basically the unknown era where we really don't know before this we had no fucking clue who, like, EU better than NA, Brazil is really good, like we were just making shit up, right? We were just completely making shit up. Like everybody was just no, and everybody was so soft about it, like, well, I actually don't really know, but EU is better than NA, but I don't really know. Now, like there's you can stick to a point, you can stick to a claim, you can stick to a take, you could be a real fan without being like a soft, like, little no claim person type of thing. And the players will be like that too. Will be like that too. So we already had these natural storylines, but now we have even more, and we could dip in the global field of everything. I think it's just gonna keep fucking growing.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about the big news of this week, and it's not even necessarily the results of Reykjavik. The news that is going to dominate this week is the news that Sentinels bought out TenZ for 1.25 million reportedly. And the entire kind of swirling of takes around this is like starting to completely flip on its head as well, based on the price point and what has ended up coming out about how the negotiation process worked and all of that kind of stuff too. Because everybody was in the dark about this, apparently including all of the players, including TenZ himself, about what the status of this was while Iceland was going on. But according to reports that came out afterwards, and according to Jack, who was talking on Reddit as well, this deal was set in place before Iceland. The price point was set in place before Iceland. And it was just on Sentinels whether or not they wanted to actually exercise the full buyout or just the loan amount of 250,000. So it was like you pay 250K to get TenZ for an X amount of time. I think it was up until the end of April or something. Maybe it's till the end of May. Till the end of May makes way more sense, right? Because that was actually till the end of Iceland. And then it was an extra $1 million to fully buy him out of his contract. That's the way that it appears, according to reports, the contract was structured. So, first of all, the monetary amount, 1.25 million, as reported by Tyler Erzberger. What do you guys think about that? Because TenZ is probably the best player in the world right now. He is an incredible content creator in a game that is blowing the fuck up in North America, the largest market available. And he just helped his team win the first major title without dropping a map. So
I think they got a pretty good deal, to be honest.
I think the number probably could have been higher. Like in hindsight, I think 1.25 is like pretty fair given everything you just said and his numbers as an influencer, and just knowing like what he brings value-wise to an organization. I don't know how it depends how long Sentinels signed him for or whatever, right? If they signed him on like a 6-month deal, that's not worth it. Of course not. But if they sign him for like a longer deal with like a good salary and they're able to recoup that money with sponsorships that they can get through, his metrics, then yeah, it becomes worth it really quick in a game like Valorant, right? But there's a lot of variables at play. I think it's a great deal for Sentinels. Like, I was turned off because of the whole like tweet and Kaide thing responding to it. But yeah, I think this is good for the scene. And I think there's no negatives in this. Like, I really do. I think everyone wanted to see TenZ on Sentinels and we got it. Like, I'm super happy and grateful that it happened. I really am, because I want NA to have the best team possible.
Yeah. Yeah. When you come, I mean, the report rumor, I can't exactly verify where this source came from about the length of TenZ's contract. But the discussion around it appears to be that his contract was a 3-year contract. And so that is also part of why the price would be larger, because obviously you're going to pay a bigger buyout if there's a significant amount of time left in the contract. You're not going to pay an enormous buyout if the guy's going to, like, in a couple of months become a free agent anyway. Yeah. With all of that considered, this does seem like a good deal, but also the right thing for C9 and for TenZ to do by the player as well, and it gives Jack back cash, right?
I mean, it honestly, I know it's been up in the air the whole time, but to me, it felt like it was just inevitable because it was the right thing for all parties involved. Like, it seems like everybody wanted it.
Yeah.
It just seemed inevitable. I think it was only a matter of time, and I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it went through, because it's the best thing for Sentinels, best thing for TenZ, best thing for C9. They got some little cash in their pocket.
Yeah.
It's the best thing for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's just cool that it happened. And then now we have the best team in the world in NA, and that gives a very interesting storyline heading forward and heading to Berlin. I think there's not to just go back to that immediately, but there's so many interesting storylines already for the next tournament that I would already just like to see it now. It's because can EU come back with all these new teams? And now TenZ, we know he's on Sentinels. They're going to be there to defend their title. They're trying to make a bunch of super teams to compete. What's going to happen there?
Yeah.
It's a very exciting time to be a fan of the game.
Yeah.
Balla, there's been a lot of discussion about like the salaries being inflated in the scene or something, or being unsustainable in North America. What do you think this does to that?
Honestly, I don't think it does too much. I think people who are freaking out about that are freaking out for the wrong thing. Like, I don't think that this buyout or this contract even is indicative of a pro, like an actual just pro, no content, no brand, nothing else, right? I don't think that it's inflating that whatsoever. I think that the value of TenZ is so obviously his brand, his influencer status, and everything else. Obviously, there's a little element of him being one of the best players in the world, but the value of him is more so from his brand than anywhere else. So I don't think that people should be freaking out about inflated, whatever. And also, the trajectory of this game is insane right now. That, like, so what if it's inflated? Like, it should be inflated because there's so much speculation of how good and big this game could be. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it at all.
I saw a lot of people making the comparison to Device's buyout when he moved over to NIP as well, because that was set at 1 million, which is very similar to this. If there wasn't the loan price involved, it was just simply like the 1 million. But that was for a much shorter term contract as well. Apparently, only 6 months they needed to buy out instead of being potentially 2 years. If that claim is correct, that TenZ was on a 3-year contract. Plus, TenZ is also fucking huge when it comes to content creation. I mean, his Device's brand is big, but it's not big in the same way.
His brand is also just based on for me at least, I feel that Device's brand is just based on him being a very excellent player, not the actual content being created around him or his own personal content. TenZ's value in that is just insane. And if you want to look at his, aside from his brand, is just like him being really good, like who he is as a person. He's just he's just chill. He's a good representative of a team as well.
Wait, he averages 20K viewers.
Yeah. I mean, that's pre-Iceland as well, right? After Iceland, we've seen every time the Sentinels guys win a major tournament, their viewership goes up by a large amount. I know that Shaz was streaming to like 12K people yesterday, and that's a huge amount of viewership compared to what he was at a year ago.
Yeah, I remember I was watching his stream a lot in the summer, and he was getting like almost like around 1,000, maybe a little something like that.
That's not bad.
And that's great. 1,000 viewers is great, but if you just win a couple tournaments and just get 12x.
Well, win a couple tournaments and add TenZ to your team as well. Yeah. That was another big boost, was when TenZ actually got added to Sentinels. The rest of the Sentinels players' streams all blew up as a result of that, just by being connected to him, which is part of the addition of adding TenZ officially to the organization, is that you're hoping your whole org's content increases because you get access to those fans and have that cross-pollination. Anyway, the bonkers scenario to be in 1 year along, having $1.25 million buyouts, but in context, it does make sense. I want to talk about Reykjavik itself now. Let's get on to the meat of the episode. First of all, Sentinels go through. They do not lose a single map at Masters Reykjavik. I want to ask you guys the question: what exactly makes Sentinels easily the best team in the world right now? What is it about this team? There's probably multiple answers, but I want to kind of have this open topic of why were they better even than expected, but better significantly than every other team that was at the tournament. Sean, starters.
I'll be short with it. I think they are just skill diff, like man for man on their team, better than any other team. They have 0 weak links on their team. Everyone fills their role really, really well, and they react to the utility they see perfectly. It's like it's not just aim. It's every time an execute comes their way, they know how to individually like maneuver around it, and the rotate can come in quickly, which means their communication is super on point. I don't think they have many holes. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like they are incredibly solid, like way better than I ever thought they would be. And TenZ is an animal. Like, he is an animal in the server. So yeah, they're really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, definitely agree. They have the best roster in the game right now. It's not debatable. I think for me to hit on a different point is just I think that in regards to their fundamentals, the just actual interplay, the trading in the scrappy situations is just better than every other team. They, in any given situation, it feels like any two players will be able to succeed in a fight against another player or two by just effectively swinging off of each other. Their fundamentals are just so good. And then on the defensive sides as well, they're one of the teams that is just so much more willing to mix up their setup every single round. Like you'd see on Bind when they have Dapper on Viper on defense, they would just do something different literally every round. They never ran the same setup. So.
Okay. Balla, what's your feel? How did they manage to not drop a single map against the other best teams in the world?
Yeah, I mean, when you put that headline out there, you automatically have to think they must know something more. They must know something different than everybody else. They know something that everybody else doesn't get. And to me, I think I haven't like fully gone into this theory, but I think they understand the macro game way better than anybody else. They understand the ways that, you know, that certain agents on other people's defaults are going to be in certain positions so that they can go and target, like, for example, Boaster on Bind. Sick clearly had a directive in Bathroom to just take it to that man. How many times they got Boaster killed? He was the first person to go down as the primary controller on attack for Fnatic was insane. They still lost the half 8-4, but they understand like how to funnel the orbs to correct people. They're funneling to Shazam every round for his Hunter's Fury. They understand like the ways that one utility piece, like Sean said, being put in one position, they now know that they can fall back and do certain things. Like, for example, if Fnatic goes for a long rush or something like that, it's completely different. Shazam will fall back into elbow and just insta ult them. Nobody else is doing these sorts of like instant reactions. it's insane. I literally think they understand the macro and the strategic aspect better than everybody.
I so agree. I so agree. And this round in particular, 6-2, when they're falling down, the call from Shazam to switch it up and push out of hookah and play aggressive and say no more executes. Like, we will be disruptive as all hell. Like, they're making Fnatic use more and more utility. They're taking fights earlier and earlier in the rounds, and they're not allowing Fnatic to play their game. You know, like, they're making Fnatic play Sentinels game, which is so important in a game like Valorant or even CS. You know, like, Shaz has done such a good job in game leading this team.
Yeah, he has. The two of the big things to me that stand out, I went back and I rewatched the VODs of some of the games that I missed when I was doing the Overwatch League. And the big things that stood out to me were, I did not expect them to be able to play this reactive style against other regions that they hadn't had a lot of scrim experience against. How the fuck were they able to react immediately to teams that they had only played against once, twice? That is unreal. That in theory, going to a LAN event like this should nerf the way that Sentinels like to play. Like super reactive, kind of anti-strategy, where they're waiting for you to make a move and they're going to perfectly counter it. They need to know what you're doing. They need to read your tendencies. And they did perfectly the whole time. Like, how do they do that? I don't get it. Their players are so much more intelligent than what I see other players do. Like, each individual player is so proactive and intelligent within their position. And they make, even when they don't have to make macro adjustments, the players make micro adjustments based on what their opponents are doing. Like when they were playing against Newturn as well, they immediately came in with a game plan of like, okay, we're just going to hard read Lackey, wherever he uses Silver Drone, that's where they're going to push, and we're all going to stand in perfect positions to dodge breach flashes. Like, watching that game back, it's like they downloaded Newturn after, I mean, come on, they must have only played like a couple of scrims against them max in their whole time at Iceland, because they're playing against everybody. And then it was the first time facing them, and they just shit on them on Bind, their best map.
Yeah,
they actually downloaded them immediately.
Well, I mean, they quite literally, Shazam did download what they were doing into his mind and then just hard countered it. I mean, that's what he had even said after the game, was they just purposely let them pick Bind into them. They were prepared for the map, and they were confident they would get a free win off that. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree. I think
map vetoes.
Yeah, I mean, the map vetoes are good. Their map pool was untouchable as well.
But that's the thing, their map pool even looked kind of shaky when they were in Challengers finals, and yet they come out and they're able to, but by the way, no one even brought them to Ascent the entire tournament. They didn't even have to play it, even though they were letting it through at the beginning, because they just 2-0'd everybody because they didn't drop a map. And then they fix up their split with TenZ playing Raze. That's the other thing as well, man. Their discipline compared to how they were playing domestically.
Oh,
TenZ discipline was insane.
That was that was one of the large questions for me that I kept going back to in the co-stream is, okay, when we see Sentinels, not on Haven and Icebox, because Haven and Icebox, the roles they're playing make complete sense. And I think that's what they would just be playing no matter what, given that the agents are good on those maps. TenZ can play Reyna on Icebox because Reyna is busted on Icebox. That's fine. But on the other maps, specifically on Bind and Split, where he was playing Raze before and he wasn't playing Disciplined, and he was satchel jumping in way too deep, and he kept getting caught out, and he wasn't finding the same impact. And then during those qualifiers, he switched to Reyna, and it felt like kind of a Band-Aid fix in the moment, just so they could get through, because he had more of an ability to just find kills on Reyna. But now, going back to the Raze, all of those problems were erased, and on the maps where he continued to play Reyna, he was playing excellently. I mean, there was just no flaws in that approach to the map in the same way that we saw on the run to Iceland.
I want to pose you guys another question as well, related to Sentinels. Who was the best player on the team?
It's Shazam. It'll just always be Shazam for me.
I think he's the most impactful, but I would say the best player had to be TenZ. He was 19-2 in opening duels in that final. That's like unreal what kind of advantage that gives you.
He was 81 over Durka. It was
insane.
He beasted.
I mean, that was
Durka
one of the
duels.
big problems for Fnatic, actually, in both of their matchups, was that Durka was just really struggling on entry. He just wasn't able to find it.
Yeah. That to me is the big topic for Sentinels. And I think that Sentinels fans, maybe the team itself, will be split between, if you seriously ask the question, who was the best player of this tournament for Sentinels? The stats say it's TenZ, and it's TenZ by a considerable margin. He was the best player of the entire tournament, not just best player on Sentinels. But Shaz does offer outrageous impact to this team.
This is another aspect of Sentinels, going back to literally the Ignition series that has just never gone away, is that they are one of the teams, again, as to how good the personnel on the roster are, they can just all play a number of agents, and they play them at the top level. It's not switching around and one is significantly better than the other, but okay, we really need this guy on X agent for this comp on this map. They can just play whatever they need, and it really does just work. I mean, Shazam just switches to Sova. Yeah, and he's insane. I mean, there's a big difference. Like, there's not a lot of players who could switch from Sova to Jett, and they're just at that level on both those agents.
His Sova did look rusty when he first swapped over to playing that full time after TenZ got added to the roster as well. But the improvements he's made individually, like on how he uses that utility, have been amazing. Like, huge strides to the point where he's one of the best Sovas in the world at using the utility now and being in the correct positions. Kurt, after you've played this clip as well, would you mind bringing up the stats that you just pulled up with the first kill and first death too? Because I feel like they tell a ridiculous story about TenZ's success in this tournament. When you consider like anyway, we'll look at it when the stats are on the screen as well. But yeah, what a run for this team.
I mean, even I think as to we maybe had some questions in the qualifier how practiced or how efficient they were with playing Astra, and the Astra was excellent. Zoms was playing really well, and he was doing what Zoms needs to do on Sentinels, which is simply be a supportive role player, use good utility on Astra, and anchor sites effectively. Yeah. He has a small role that needs to be achieved for the team, but he does it very well. He's one of the best site anchors there is.
That is an unbelievable fucking play. I lost my mind when I saw that. I had it on a second monitor while I was getting ready to cast the Overwatch League, and I let out a little scream. I was like,
That's literally insane.
Oh, this was just pure pain.
It's genuinely unbelievable. Like, he dinks Doma on the swing with the Phantom, and then so he gets aim punch, and then he finishes off Mystic and is able to go back and kill Doma.
Yeah,
That's just
headshots for the style points.
Yeah, just headshots as well. Kurt, would you be able to bring up those stats pages?
Clip, him fucking just getting up and just like running in place.
Yeah, I think that if there was a crowd there, I feel like the atmosphere for that clip changes a lot. But it did look really goofy when he just stood up and did like the...
Oh, I fucking loved it. I loved it.
Okay, yeah, this is what I wanted to look at, is if you just do it by... yeah, sure. This is actually great. So take a look at the people who've got the highest first kill per round here. We've got Durka, Prozin, TenZ, Yampy. Those are the four that I want to focus on because they all play somewhat similar roles for their team. They're like the big entry guys for Fnatic, for Sharks, for Sentinels, for Liquid. And you look at their first kill per round, it's all super high, 0.2. That is pretty massive. 1 in 5 rounds, they're getting a first kill. And then you look at their first deaths, and you can see the massive difference. TenZ is more than 2 for 1 in first kills. Everybody else is pretty much 1 for 1. You know, Durka's getting it slightly more of the time. Yampy's getting it slightly less of the time. But they're getting punished a lot for playing as aggressively. TenZ was not at all. He was just winning. He was simply better.
I feel like you have to give credit to Shazam for setting him up in the early rounds. Like, it's not like he's just running out with no utility and getting these kills, right? So I think there has to be some credit given elsewhere to Shazam because, God, those stats are absolutely ridiculous. Like, that is incredible. He's like so much better than everyone in his role.
Yeah. That's why whenever the question is brought up, I sort of just default to Shazam because he's he has so much impact. It's incredible the amount of impact he has both as a player and an actual fragger on the team and also as the architect of the team in a general sense. Which always just leads me to wanting to give him MVP status in these situations because it's just remarkable that amount of work that goes in.
Do you guys believe there is? Sorry, Balla. Sorry, I cut you off there. What do you want to say?
No, I'm just basically adding to that point. I think I agree with Sean's assessment that it's TenZ, but Shazam is the most impactful, which I don't understand how we're quantifying things, anyways. But Shazam literally is doing so much on any rounds, right? He's info peeking, he's making the reads, he's making the calls, and he's fragging like a beast. Like, especially when they're playing Icebox. Like, that's just bar none. He's the best player on Icebox. And then bring it to the other maps, and you see the things that he's doing. Like, whenever there's an execute or a control strat or a different thing, there's a read made, there's an info play made at crucial moments in the round where all of a sudden it's just locked up because what Shazam did, not because of what TenZ did. Maybe TenZ will get the frags down the line, but because Shazam peeks deep down long B on Bind, for example, they now have the read that they can go stack A. Now, who do we consider the best player in that round?
Yeah, there's rounds where like Shazam was on Jett on split, and he was just like hovering in the middle of middle, just fearless. And he's getting so much info in this time frame. Like that information on an esport level is just, I can't even explain how valuable that is to his team, that no one's in mid. They either do an A hit or a B hit in the next like 10 seconds, guys. And I think he had like one dagger at the time. Like he's just
that round where he just had a single dagger.
He's just making so many like info plays that just go over people's heads. He has so much impact on the games, man. He's so valuable to the team.
This brings me to my next big topic, which is I thought Sentinels were clearly the most confident team at the event. How much do you think that LAN experience actually factored into the results that we saw? How important was that to being able to have Sentinels make that run, or to have Liquid lose to version 1 early on, or for Newton, Solo, and Perry to carry people through? Like, how much do you guys feel that actually had a factor as well as the other stuff that we've already discussed?
I do think it was a factor. As to its significance, I think that's pretty hard to quantify.
Okay.
But I do think it was pretty apparent when teams were lacking the composure or were beginning to feel the nerves, which was just never the case for Sentinels. I think Newturn, for the most part, were, given that they had already played in a LAN environment in Korea, they seemed pretty composed as well. But I think there were moments where you could see, like Fnatic, for instance, it was the first
Liquid.
map. I think it was the first map against Newturn with Fnatic that went to, I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look at the bracket again. That went to OT. But I remember thinking in that game, like, they just looked really shaky. And then after they got the win, it was like, oh, okay. And then on the second map, Fnatic looked back into Fnatic form. But there were teams that were having games like that. Yeah, I think it was this one, Kurt. If you could just go down to
sketchy. I got
map.
scared with
Could you click on map 1 so I could just remember what happened? And maybe it wasn't.
It was map 2, they lost it,
but it was one of the late games for Fnatic where I felt that was absolutely the case. And I felt the same thing with Liquid at certain points. But yeah, as to its significance, it's pretty hard to say. At least in regards to like how much that helped Sentinels.
Okay, well, let me pose it perhaps a different way. Do you feel like it's a fair excuse for the European teams to say, well, we had, this team is full of 17 to 18-year-old players who were playing, a lot of them, their first ever time on a LAN, never mind first time in an environment like this, and we will look a lot better next time around? Or were they simply outclassed in terms of other things that didn't matter when it came to the confidence level or the way that they would normally play compared to how they did at the event?
Oh, I think it was very important. As far as looking at EU, yeah, I think it's very important. I think that Fnatic team is super young. I didn't know that coming into the event. I mean, they have like 3 or 4 17, 18-year-olds, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
What is their average age has to be so low as a team. I mean, they'll only get better as time goes on. I'm sure some of their players were nervous or maybe missed a couple pieces of utility here and there.
This was the game I was talking about that I couldn't remember. Yeah, it was Fnatic versus V1. It was this first map. Yeah, they looked so shaky and then after they got the win, it looked like they were able to calm down and they felt confident again. And then on the second map, Ascent, they just rolled them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember thinking the same thing, Wyatt. I thought they looked a little shaky. I was like, wow, they looked so shaky. They look like they're flustered and they're nervous. Yeah. But yeah, that first matchup against Sentinels kind of I think that it put that in them because they lost those close games. And then when they played those later games in the lower bracket, yeah, they looked a little shaky at times.
I think that it might like not have mattered as much this time because everybody except Sentinels everybody except Sentinels at some point during the tournament looked unconfident. Like version 1 started off against Crazy Raccoon, like you could see that they were not happy. Liquid as well started off very, very rough. Every team I could literally see in the cams like how they're all like this, you know?
Yeah.
They're not loose. They're not ready to play. They're not getting hype and whatnot. Every single team except Sentinels.
You know, the only player on Sentinels that I saw doing that was Sick.
Sick. Yep.
He had extreme body language that was like, it was like, you know, when a kid gets absorbed in a film and everything that happens to the main character they're reacting to. It was like that for Sick when either when he was playing or when he was watching his teammates as well. And that I know that I'm kind of like reading into fucking like some. I'm not a fucking psychologist. The fuck do I know what's going on inside the guy's head?
Oh no!
But it seemed to me to be like fairly convincing body language that he was a little more tense than everybody else that was on the team. Everyone else seemed very loose and open with what they were doing and very confident in how they were taking.
I swear he's just like that. I swear I've boot camped always like that for like months and months. He does it in scrims too. Like he's just really like, I think he just gets super focused on the game, and when his concentration breaks, he's just like he loses it for a second. But he's even like that. He was like that in scrims at boot camp. So I don't think he was like overly nervous or anything. I'm sure him being on stage like that, he probably had some nerves, but he's like that all the time.
Right, I was reading into some crazy body language during the tournament. Specifically, I remember it was the Liquid game against Crew, and on the walkout, the Liquid players were like looking at the ground. Sliggy was kind of hunched over, and the Crew coach just comes out. Mega Chad. He looks like Jason Statham, and he's just walking out, and I'm like, holy shit, Liquid are gonna lose this first map. The Crew guy's like so confident. The coach looks like he's gonna beat. I mean, he looks like a strong man as well. I'm like, oh my god, Crew is gonna smash Liquid. Liquid looked so out of it, and then they just won 13-2 on the first map. Just played no effect in it whatsoever. They were just kind of walking out.
Yeah. When you actually saw them get in the game, they were like they were all locked up again. It was different.
Yeah,
I feel like this is it.
Was this okay? Yeah, was this the walkout?
Or maybe it was against Vikings. Was it Vikings?
No, it was definitely against Crew, because it specifically came to me when you saw the coach walkout difference. But about here, yeah, look at this difference. Look at the difference between the double coach walkout. Jason Statham
like a
on the right.
Walk.
Yeah, just staring at the camera. Just a massive difference in physicality there. I'm like, oh my god, I think they have a lot more confidence in Liquid coming into this. And then it just, nope, lost 13-2 on the first map.
Armchair psychology going on. Just to the
reading
max.
into the body language of the coaches.
I think the LAN experience affected Liquid in a different way. I think their players have a little bit of experience, but the lack of experience on like the in-game leader role, when you have to make those calls when the pressure's high, it's a lot different. So I think that them lacking that voice on the team hurts them kind of going into this question a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how you could see Boaster, by the way, and Fnatic, like literally why, like you could see them come out a little shaky, whatnot, and Boaster brings that team back, and everybody all of a sudden is all vibing together and you know, laughing, making jokes, looking at each other. All that sort of stuff comes from a person. It doesn't have to necessarily be the IGL, but a person on the team that is like morale boosting everybody. I think that is so important.
I want to talk about some expectations versus reality for Masters 2 Reykjavik, because there were certain things that we thought were going to happen that didn't. Some things that we thought would happen that did. I want to start with perhaps... No, you know what? I'm going to leave that one until the end. The obvious Sean's hot take of 3 European teams that weren't even going to make it would slaughter everybody at the event. But I want to start with the actual matches that we saw, right? To me, there were 3 big upsets that occurred during the tournament compared to how we, as Plat Chat, had expected the bracket to run out. The first one being that opening Sentinels Fnatic game, we thought there was a good chance of Sentinels winning, but we had all, I think, predicted Fnatic to come out hot and Sentinels to make a lower bracket run. To start with, like right there, what do you think what do you think made the difference between expectation and reality for what we were considering versus how it actually played out? I want to start with Balla because he is the Fnatic simp.
Yeah, I thought that Durka was going to be way more impactful, but he was getting his ass shut down. Like every time he went to do his little dash thing on Icebox, just completely shut down, no value whatsoever. He was getting first picked a lot. I thought that Durka was going to be way better than he was, simply because he's Durka. I don't know.
Yeah, he was struggling. I mean, he had great matches against every non-Sentinels team, but he was just getting, his aggression was just completely nullified by Sen. Also, they started on Icebox, which is just, with Sentinels in this form, that map for them is just outrageous because you have, first of all, Shazam on it, who's been the best player on Icebox since Icebox came out. His defensive opping is just out of control.
Yeah.
His usage of the Jett ult on that map, he always seems to find huge value with that
AC
as well.
130 from above.
Yeah, I mean, he was just farming, and then also TenZ, the lone Reyna player of the tournament. I know Reyna seemed to have just, in actual play, it feels that Reyna has trended away from being played on Icebox, though I
don't know
still
why.
think Reyna is nasty on Icebox.
Yeah.
She's so good at anchoring on A. I think Reyna is just sick on this map, and it doesn't really get played anymore, but TenZ was playing her, and he was also pounding. I mean, they were just two guys set up to have lights-out games on this map. I thought, I mean, they were just out of control. That really did it for me here. But then, what was the second
Haven.
one? Yeah, the second one onto Haven. I mean, well, first of all, TenZ TenZ did not have a bad map this entire tournament, did he? Did he have a bad map?
I don't think so.
I think the only thing I could ever point to for TenZ is that he finished this half with only 7 kills. It was very average. But then he went on to attack and he just shit on everybody. He was the best player on attack on this map. So, no, I don't think he had a single bad map as far as I can remember.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I was...
Shaz was so good this map. Shaz was so good this map.
Yeah. Yeah, go on, Sean. I know that you did a whole video about this as well.
No, yeah, I was beyond impressed with all of Fnatic's takes. Like, I have no idea how Sentinels managed to counter all these takes. Like, they are so well thought out, innovative. The pistol round where Doma jumps up and like walls top sight and Durka plants up there and Chaz just sticks the defuse. Like, everything Fnatic did was really, really, really good. Like, I don't think other teams beat them in this game. Like, Sentinels played a phenomenal map to steal that Icebox game from them. I don't know. I couldn't believe they could do it again in the finals. Like, I couldn't believe it, but we never got to see it.
Yeah, I was amazed that they managed to win Icebox Sentinels. They only kept it to 6-6 because Shaz dropped 20 kills in the first half on op. Like, that is ludicrous, and that was just to keep it even against Fnatic. But then on the other side, Fnatic's defense just they weren't as good at being able to react, and TenZ was getting every opening dual. So at that point, it's they managed to really close it out there. But that's
actually a really good point on Shazam. The fact that when you actually watch back that first half, it felt like Fnatic had their number. It felt like they were figuring out how to beat them, and all of a sudden Shazam comes out, and it's just like boss music starts playing. Like he's just getting every frag. He's on a different angle every single round. But everybody else on that half was not showing up. Like, Sick was completely absent in this first series. TenZ, obviously the first half he wasn't there. Everybody else too, like not major
Dapper had
impact.
a terrible first map too.
You could see a possibility because we all had this expectation that Sentinels would come out and be a little slow, right? Just because that's Sentinels. Yeah. That's typically how things go for them in the first match. You often see them losing first maps, like against Andbox, for example, and stuff like that. So we expected that. And honestly, it started that way, but Shazam turns up, and then all of a sudden, everybody's there in the second half, in the next map. Imagine a situation where Shazam doesn't turn up in this map, and they never get going. they never get going because Shazam didn't show up.
Yeah, but that never happened. Like, who knows what would have happened if like they would have lost that first map and lost a little confidence, right? Like they had so much confidence, but what if that was taken away right off the rip? Yeah, who knows?
Maybe they would have looked like the other teams who were like,
I don't think so though. I think this team just never loses confidence. I don't think I can think of a single match in Sentinels history where they've lost confidence. Those guys always believe in themselves to the max.
Zoms is a Chad.
Well, Zoms, I don't believe, has the brain capacity for self-doubt. So I think the rest of them, when I talk to that guy, he exists in a different dimension, man. He's actually operating in a different dimension.
The Zoms Nation dimension.
He's not stupid. I don't mean that to imply that. I mean that his brain simply can't perceive doubt. It just doesn't perceive certain human emotions, of which doubt is one of them. He's just vibing, dude. He's just going through life fucking vibing. The other big one that was counter to our expectations. This one I would say even more so, actually. Sentinels Fnatic, it's all right. It's a clash between two tier 1 teams. We weren't 100% sure in Fnatic. I think we gave Sentinels like a 40% chance. Seems silly in hindsight considering they didn't drop a map, but still, we thought it was going to be fairly even. The Liquid version 1 game is the next one that I think was a big one that goes the opposite way to most community expectations. Because version 1 have a fucking sub. They literally are playing with somebody they've only had 1 week of scrim time with. Yeah. And they're able to beat the number 1 team out of EMEA. That is a large upset compared to our expectations.
Yeah. I mean, at that also, it's not like and I don't mean this with any disrespect to Jammies because he played really well and his stocks went straight up.
Yeah.
But it's not even like they had brought in someone with a lot of name value in the NA scene. They had to go outside of teams that had made fairly deep in the qualifier, I think, due to the rules. And he was on Beast Coast previously.
Yeah.
And he really turned up. So a lot of credit to him for filling in and playing well. Yeah, boy, did I feel the V1 just hit him with a little comp diff. That V1 comp was hitting. They succeeded in this tournament for the same reason that they qualified, in my mind, in the first place, which is that they have a great read on the meta and they're possibly the best team at abusing the broken agents right now in tandem. I mean, they just run them all and they just they just abuse broken post-plant mechanics in the game. And listen, it gets the wins. Not mad at that at all. Like, they just use the busted agents right now in a really good way. And also, Effie's had the tournament of his life.
He did, yeah.
I mean, I've been praising the good word of Effie's for a million years, I feel, because I never thought he was the problem when he got removed from Gen.G back in whatever the 60s. And at this point, I didn't think he could perform this well. I mean, I always thought he was a good support player, but holy shit, he was popping off. He was winning every clutch. That was a different level from him.
He was the most clutch player in the tournament. After all stats are done, he had like a 20-something% clutch rate.
Oh, you mean he just straight up was statistically?
Wow, statistically, I mean, statistic clutch, it's hard to actually quantify, but he had the best clutch rate. And I think close to the most amount of clutches attempted as well. So you could consider. I think that V1 had a absolute land buff after the first series. They just all of a sudden, Vanity's fucking screaming across. Like, they're the ones who started the screaming across against to the other team. It was V1, and some of that might have gotten into TL's head. They started screaming back as well, but I think that sort of style and just being on LAN changed everything for this team, and Effie's being one of those people who got activated, right? The person who, because his team is so strongly behind him and there and rooting for him and all that, like, that really gets to your head and makes you perform better.
I felt like they played EU style almost better than EU did. Like, when they played Liquid, they had like the really tactical style. Like you said, the Viper, Killjoy, Astra. Jesus, it looked so difficult to deal with, especially when you watch them play New Turn. I don't know how New Turn won that game. Like, it looked like V1 had them read at every turn, and then the end of the game happened, and they just crumbled. That's what it felt like. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're playing EU style, better agents. They just had better. They were just playing with better agents.
Even though the individual adjustments to me were not there for Liquid as well. Like the amount of times that Yampi was just dashing into a smoke on split and getting sprayed down, and then you keep doing the same stuff over and over and over again because that's your only method that you can concoct of how to break through the angles at the choke and get past the Viper and Astra utility. There was no major adjustment point that I thought there would be. You know, I thought that the European teams would be able to adjust on the fly much more, and it turns out that they couldn't. Like that was one of the major regions that North America was able to come early out the gates to a 2-0 victory in terms of the interregional aspect, because they were much better at making those on the fly adjustments in the middle of the game. Yeah, and then the mental collapse on Haven as well. Kurt, I don't know if you can find the clip of Soulcast creeping behind Vanity.
No.
But that, I mean, at that point, you just know it's done, right? Like you just, and it's not just the fans that know it's done. Soulcast knows it's done. Vanity knows it's done. They both understand that is not a situation that you recover from. And because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. If you think, oh, fuck, that's it, then that's going to be it for the rest of the game because that's all you're going to think about is how much you're in your own head.
Yeah, and even like do you remember the classic eco in this game where, was it this game? No, it was a different game, because it was sick like firewalled or whatever to get past an alarm bot garage. Like there's just so many bizarre rounds that happen to these EU teams and they just, emotionally defeated them with random little plays.
It was on that Haven map as well, though. It was just V1's utility usage was probably, I think, at its absolute peak in that map. It was everything was working from the more obvious stuff, like every post plant, the utility for it just worked every single time. I mean, just the lineups outside and A long onto the spike when it was planted on A just worked every single time. But also how Zelsis was working the map on the lurk, and he would just call out, like he'd be working through garage where Yampy would have his alarm bot, and then he would just call for Vanity to place a star over the alarm bot, and he would creep by it and get past in the back. I mean, there were interplays of the team going on like that throughout the map constantly, and
also it's won like 2 or 3 1v2s that game. It's like insane.
Yeah. But that point that you're bringing up, Wyatt, as well, is individuals calling proactively and like playmaking and asking for assistance from the rest of their team to make plays. That doesn't come from the IGL. That comes from the player making the play.
Right.
And that is, to me, a very North American thing that I don't think we see as much in the European scene, is this ability on the fly for individuals to just call, I want to go for this play, set me up for success because of the scenario I found myself in. Now, the round that I'm also thinking of there from Sentinels is where Sick against Newturn was able to lurk all the way into the backside of B. Do you guys remember that round where Sick just walked in through B long and Zoms is like spamming for him to bait so that they don't look towards him, and they've got different utility to set him up as well. I think they had like Newturn had somebody hiding in hookah and someone backside. But that round didn't end up playing out. It didn't work for Sentinels. But there was clearly like the calls are coming from a different position and they're flexible enough to allow other people to take over a round in terms of calling and proactivity if they need to.
Yeah, like on that point, I feel like EU tries to go for stuff like that, but they don't have the team play to make it work. Like you'll see Yampy or Scream get in a position you're like, oh, something could happen here, but then they just go by themselves. They don't have the patience or the discipline to be like, hey, could I get an Astra Star here before I go for the play? I think that's like the difference that that proactivity is successful versus not successful.
It's hard. I mean, if you think about yourself in that position, you have to be aware of all the utility that you have available as a team and what can be spared for you to make your individual play. That's the kind of stuff that mostly only IGLs are thinking about. But to have a team where everybody can be thinking about that is next fucking level. And that, I think, is absolutely required in a game like Valorant. If you think about the game like 2 years down the road, everyone's going to be doing that. If you're a team that relies on your IGL to make those kind of plays, I mean, you're going to be a bad team because you just can't make the same kind of plays all around the map that your competitors are going to be able to. It's natural at this stage in the game as people are learning that isn't the case, but that is 100% going to be a direction in the future where teams just outclass the current thinking of the game because everyone's able to think about the opportunities that are present to them.
That's like a CS mindset that I feel like Shaz really brought into this team. If I had to guess, they have a lot of team discussions and maybe even watch VODs together as a team. And Shaz says his thoughts on like what to do. And then, together they create little anti-strats. This is what we used to do like back on Misfits, like, in CSGO. It's just getting everyone involved and understanding the game plan is super, super important. And yeah, like you said, when you were watching the EU teams at this event, it didn't look like they had a B and C plan. They only had an A plan. It was our executes, and if those don't work, well, we can kind of play on the fly and just see what happens. But there's no real plan. It's just, okay, we're missing a Brimstone. Ah, dang, that sucks. Like once that guy gets picked.
Yeah. The other major match that I thought shattered expectations for me was NewTurn beating version 1. And while I would have expected that in a normal world where version 1 lose to Team Liquid and they look a little shaky because they've got a sub, with version 1 beating Team Liquid and looking so solid with jammies, I did not expect them to lose to NewTurn. I thought the NewTurn didn't have as much of a chance in this game, especially with Bind getting banned out by default by version 1. The map pool looks good for them, and for NewTurn, they have to win on Ascent and Split because they just simply don't have a chance on Haven. And that is what happened in double OT on both maps. So, or not double OT, I guess it was single OT on the third map. But this match to me was another big expectation breaker. Because I thought even if Korea had managed to make it to that point, they would actually end up losing against any of the NA or EU teams. Didn't end up happening like that.
Yeah, I think I was
sorry, go ahead.
I think maybe a little bit because of the expectations we set for Liquid, or rather maybe where we place them in our mind. The fact that version 1 beat them, we just rated them so highly that we then, it's like you put them out of then that realm where NewTurn is a reasonable team to upset them.
Right.
But I think that, well, obviously the thing working against NewTurn the most was their map pool. That was obvious. They couldn't play Icebox and they couldn't play Haven. They had to play one in every series, and they lost Haven in every single series, and they played it in every series. So they had to win the second two maps every game, every match rather. And the fact that they did that so many times was pretty ridiculous. But against version 1 specifically, I just thought it was very cool how they found a workaround to version 1's comp and approach to the game, specifically on Split, running what they typically do on Split, which is the double duelist. They have the Raze, they have the Jett, and they have the absolute best breach utility timings that you will ever see. The breach timings with Suggest's Raze are just perfect every single time. And with that utility, they were just able to get past all of the Killjoy mollies that would be laid down, the Astra util, the breach utility into the site executes was perfect, and their duelists would play off of it. I was very impressed with NewTurn in this game specifically. And this is where I think they exceeded my expectations a bit. I thought that they had some major firepower, but man, did they... even in that regard, I think they pushed it further than I had thought. Like, I thought Lakia was good, but god damn, he was
Lakia popped.
He was feasting. Yeah. I mean, it was
clutch where he jumped out heaven. Oh my
dude,
god,
that was this round. This is it right here.
That's it.
Yeah,
what? He jumps through them balls.
He just goes for it.
Yeah.
This changes the tide of the entire match as well, by the way, because if they don't win this round, they almost certainly don't get it to OT, and they just lose 0-2, and no one's talking about Korea being a region that overperformed or anything, because they just boom, 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 and probably end up just going out to another tier 1 team in the lower bracket, as they did when they met Fnatic. So that really does change that one round changes the whole storyline of Korea, not just NewTurn, but of Korea.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
I think that after the Liquid game, or just in general, for all the stock people, fucking V1 was getting short squeezed before the tournament because they had the sub. Like all these people are selling their stocks or getting ready to sell their stocks because there's going to be a huge downfall or whatever. And then they beat Liquid and everybody's like, holy shit, they're getting short squeezed. Everybody's buying the fuck. It's going like crazy to the moon. Everybody's like, fucking V1 to the moon. And then they play Newturn, who already got fucking sold off like beforehand because Korea Vision Strike is going down. Everybody's like, oh, Korea's not actually that good anymore. And the reality was they didn't really change. Like, they're just still good. They were the expectations that everybody had before. But like when it actually comes to the game, Newturn always showed up in the second half clutch moments. Like their defense, they were flowing on like another level in this match. Honestly, if they had the form that they had in the second halves and overtimes against Sentinels, I think that game would have looked much, 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 much closer because the way they were swinging off of each other, it looked like classic, like 1.6 Fnatic, like the most perfect CS type of shit that you've ever seen because their timings were good. And when players are playing like that, it's just impossible, no matter what utility you have, to be able to counter them. It's just so beautiful to watch. And that's what happened. That's why I said they got a land buff. When they started clutching, everybody started to be like involved and ready to play the game. And I don't know. That's my theory of what happened in the game was just they got buffed like crazy on land.
They're really quick. Like they're so quick with their utility. Like you said, like when they got deep in the game and it looked like they fell off of whatever game plan they had because their game plan stopped working in the early parts. And they just played a little bit looser and trusted, the raise on split in particular to just get past all the utility. I mean, they were just banging at the end. They looked so good. I'm actually terrified for like a year down the road when they understand all like the intricate little CS things, like rotations and timings, and just how all of the little things that I feel like Sentinels probably does well as like a first mover from CS. I think they're going to lose that over time, and Korea's going to gain that over time. So that kind of scares me a little.
Okay.
Wait, you think that they're gonna like NA is gonna lose the fundamentals that they're good at?
No, I just think the other regions are gonna get it.
Okay.
And the disparity between the regions is gonna go away. And I think the tactical regions will end up winning once they get the things that Sentinels has, unless Sentinels adapts and gets that stuff too.
The major expectation versus reality, though, I think, was just the EU versus the world kind of mentality. Like I wanna spend this moment, Sean, to return back to what I said we were gonna return to, which was your hot take, which I'm sure you juiced it up a little bit because I asked you to come up with some spicy stuff. But I agreed with portions of what you said. Was that I thought the two European teams were favorites to take this tournament. I thought that Liquid had a clear run to the upper bracket, and it would have been very disappointing if they didn't make it. And I thought that teams like Fnatic were favored in matches, even against the top tier, like Sentinels when they were playing the upper quarterfinals. That didn't actually end up happening. So my question to you, Sean, is North America now, can you clearly say, is North America better than Europe? And if they are, why was that not evident before? And why did this tournament shift that mentality?
No, I definitely don't think North America is better than Europe. I think the depth of Europe is still significantly better than NA. And even if you look, like I said, I don't think Fnatic is the best Europe has to offer. I think they're very, very good. Like, I think they're insanely good, probably a top 5 team in the world. But I don't think that I don't think they're up to like the FPX level, Like, I just hold that team very high. And I know there's a lot of roster changes going on. There's a ton of roster changes going on right now, but I don't know. I really don't know. I predicted the top 4 teams in this event. I thought it would play out differently solely because I didn't think TenZ would have the impact he had. And I think if TenZ didn't have the impact he had, then what I said would have held true and the whole thing would have been different. But it didn't. And he's incredible at his first Valorant LAN. And that's what propelled Sentinels to this win in my eyes.
Right.
I never saw TenZ having this impact.
Right. Yeah, because that was another one of the hot takes that you had was like TenZ is going to be the third best player on the team. And to be honest, I do think that was a very valid expectation coming into the tournament, was that TenZ would end up being behind Shaz or Sick. I mean, Sick had been previously their number one player coming in, and he ended up being the third behind. I mean, was he third? Maybe he was even fourth, but I think he was third behind TenZ and
It's hard to
Shaz.
say.
I mean, he definitely...
I don't know.
He definitely wasn't first or second. So,
definitely wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't first or second for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Dapper also had enormous impact.
I think Zoms. I think Zoms was really good this tournament too. Actually.
Yeah, but the scenarios in which Zoms can have impact are just naturally less than the other players on their team because of how he plays. But yeah, I think that was a reasonable expectation. I agreed with you that I thought that was a very reasonable take. Turns out TenZ is just the fucking best player in the world.
Yeah, it turns out I was severely wrong in that aspect of my calculation. TenZ is just, he carried them through. Like, he got the 19-2 opening duel thing. I cannot get past that. That is an outrageous stat line. It's just so outrageous that
I can't even comprehend. I don't understand
that is just wild. Now, one thing I just you can't come on this show and just say something about, well, if FPX were there. If only FPX were there.
It does smell like EU copium.
I mean, it is EU copium. It is. But I think these teams were lacking experience. Like, when it comes to the EU teams that I see, the other top EU teams have a plethora of experience at these big events, and Liquid lacking an in-game leader, and Fnatic lacking, just experience. They're very young. They're super young. Like we said, they have like 3 17, 18-year-olds on their team.
Yeah.
I think it's not anything against Fnatic. I think they have potential to be the best team in EU in even like a couple months. But this wasn't going to be their tournament, right? Based on their lack of experience, clearly, based on what we saw at the finals.
I mean, FPX also have had a history of not actually turning up when it gets to big games or failing to adapt, like, for example, against Liquid's Haven composition. So I feel like there are similar problems with other teams in Europe. They just manifest in different ways as well. I don't really, apart from old Heretics where they had Nisao, I don't personally believe that there's another team that I would have rather had representing Europe. And even then, I would have liked to send both Heretics and Fnatic, perhaps, as the two representatives. It just, I can understand the depth argument. I just can't really think of a team that would have had a better shot in the current era. Maybe like New G2 or New Ascend, but they didn't exist at the time to really represent Europe.
Maybe. I also think, like, looking at this tournament, like, you have to realize when you look at the bracket, Fnatic had an opening game. They did get boomed by Sentinel. That opening matchup. So look at the score lines, right? They lost 13-11, 13-10 in that opening matchup. They rematched them again in the finals, 14-12, 16-14. 13-11. Like, these are all games that could easily have gone the other way if one tiny thing changes. Like, it's these regions are very, very close. That's something I didn't see possible, right? I didn't think TenZ would have this impact, and if he didn't, I think those games probably slightly trickle in Fnatic's favor. The series draw out further, and who knows what happens. That's all I'm saying is, and I think there is a team that could have matched up against Sentinels better in the EU region.
Okay.
Yeah. We have just memed FPX out of we've had so many talks about FPX on this show because we just always have the highest expectation for them, and they just always crumble, and it puts us in this position where we say things like they're unbelievable, and then we think they're going to win it all, and then it just never happens. Oh, God.
Guys, look at this one. It's a 5-on-3 last round with a bunch of sheriffs and specters.
I don't want to win
this.
I'm closing my eyes. I don't want to get blind.
Don't flash me. Don't flash me, Magnum. I don't want to see it. Oh, there it is. It's so sad.
I felt it. I have my eyes closed. I felt it.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It is Mystic, though. I want to put blame in the right place.
Oh, it was Mystic?
It's Mystic.
Why do I think it was Magnum?
Yeah, on this map. Magnum plays it on Bind.
There is something to be said, though, about, I guess, just another one of the additional reasons to be excited for Berlin is that there are going to be so many more teams total that you'll have it'll be an even better tournament in regards to, I think, having more matchups and a better understanding as to where the skills of the regions lie, you know?
Sure.
Because if you want to consider CIS a region as well, we didn't see CIS. I mean, if you want to consider FPX a CIS team, I guess you could kind of, but Gambit are a straight up CIS team. And it would have been cool to have them as well. I think Gambit are pretty sick. So
yeah, I have a question to you guys. Okay. So how do you think that it hurt Fnatic given their play style, execute heavy, super utility based, not reactive like Sentinels? Look at all the extra maps they played in this bracket and the footage that Shaz had to watch as an in-game leader playing a reactive style that's anti-strat heavy. What if they didn't have that footage? Like, what if they had to play another EU team at some point in this bracket, but they didn't? Like, the bracket played out really well for Sentinels, and the matchups, they played really well against Fnatic in these late game scenarios. But I can see scenarios in my head where these things don't happen. Fnatic doesn't have to play a play-in match before they play Sentinels. And after they play Sentinels, you know, they don't have to run the gauntlet through. They have to play all these difficult teams in the lower bracket, and then V1 beating Liquid, and then Newturn beating V1. It's like Sentinels didn't have to show much. They didn't have to show nearly as much before
they
the
only have to play a map.
They only showed Icebox and Haven up until their game in the final, and then they played on split. But Sean, I think the flaw with that argument though is that Sentinels won their games so convincingly they didn't have to show anything else. So in the world where they did have to show things, they're naturally weaker anyway, and they haven't set themselves up for success. But what they managed to do was play so well that they didn't have to show their hand. That to me is even more impressive. Like, even though all of the maps, again, like going back to your previous comment about all of the maps are really close, the slightest thing could have tipped them in their favor. I think there are even similar amounts of universes where Sentinels wins even harder in the upper bracket, because in the opening game against Fnatic, they're actually ahead by a lot, and then Fnatic comes back to make the maps close. Like, look at that run of 5 rounds at the end of the map before Sentinels close it out. Same thing happens on Haven here as well, where Fnatic are able to get a really good second half, but they were down 8-4 at the half, you know? Like, Sentinels was always in the lead in these games. I think there's an equal number of universes where they close out in an even more dominating fashion, especially in that first game.
Yeah.
I agree. Universes where they lose a map.
Yeah, I could see that argument too. We were talking about this beforehand. Is like, whenever a team loses in a game like this, there's always going to be things that could have gone their way. But the same thing could be said for the winning team, right? Like, they could have snowballed you even harder and like won 13-5. So we just need to see the matchups more. And I don't know if, you know, Sentinels playing Fnatic, Vikings, Newturn, then Fnatic again versus Fnatic playing, you know, Crew, Sentinels, and then going lower bracket, X10, then Fnatic plays V1, then Fnatic plays Liquid, then Fnatic plays Newturn, then Fnatic plays Sentinels again in the grand finals. Like, Fnatic, I mean, it's Fnatic's fault they lost. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's the way it has to be, because they lost, but they had to show a lot in this event. And they're a tactical team that has a lot of executes. So the more maps they play, the worse they get. Whereas for Sentinels, I think they could play maps all day based on how they play. Like, their style is sick. Like, no pun intended. They just run around and react off of utility really well. They have good anti-strat game plans, and they're constantly tweaking little things. Whereas Fnatic felt really static at the event.
And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of the North American style. Before we get into let me tackle the stylistic thing first. A question again to the group. North America has been talking since the dawn of time in Valorant about wanting to play what Balla refers to as the optimal style of Valorant, of CS as well, where you want to be trying to be as loose as possible. Not loose in a puggy sense where people are just running around doing random shit, but loose in a flexible, reactive sense, where you don't want to be as strict with your game plan. You don't want to have a situation where you lose your Brimstone, for example, early on in the round, and you don't know how to adapt your strategy, your plan, because you're too rigid with it. Is it fair to say, coming out of this tournament, that style is better? That North America is correct when they're saying that is optimal right now in the game, to play a style that is so flexible that you just can adjust on the fly?
No, not. I mean, it is the optimal style now, but in the future, we're gonna move more towards CS the way Sentinels goes, where there's gonna be protocols, right? Like when you take showers and certain people do certain things at certain times, utilities used in certain ways. You're playing reactively, and they tried to actually. Like the Skybird would go into shower, and if it blinded someone, he would send the dog immediately. That's like a protocol. He's reacting to what the other team's doing, and if the guy didn't get blinded, he wouldn't use the dog. But they don't have protocols ready for other things, which is what you're talking about right now. And over time, the more experience comes into the game, those protocols will be developed, and you'll probably be able to switch agents and also maintain those protocols because people have familiarity of what's necessary. And right now, it's kind of like a little bit of a gray area of like what's necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say the I don't know. I don't really like the generalization though. I think specifically in regard to NA as to it being, I think that gets pretty overblown. Like the idea that NA is, I really hate the region generalizations actually for all regions.
I actually dislike it too.
Because how could, okay, if you're looking at this tournament, and you saw it a lot, if you're looking at this tournament and people say, well, Fnatic and Liquid, the tactical teams. Sentinels and V1, the not tactical teams. V1 aren't tactical. They're a team that got here not based on. I don't think they have way better individual skill than the teams they beat on the route here. But they're here.
That's why I won't say NA is the better region, because Sentinels plays totally different than like some of these other teams in NA.
And even Cloud9, the team that came in third place, I think they're another team I think they're a good example of a team that has a lot of excellent little trap plays and utility usages around the map. And I think that kind of falls in the category of more tactical. They were abusing Zeta on Breach really well. And the Astra, they were one of the better teams with the Astra already. But then they also had the ability to be... they were also a high firepower team with, like Leaf popping off on Raze, etc. And then if you go further down the line, I think that, well, I was going to say Luminosity. That's pretty far down the line now. But there are a number of different styles in the scene is the point that I'm getting to.
Sure.
And if two of the teams in the top three are teams that got to that spot in the qualifier by using the new agents the most effectively, that is just a direct counter to that generalization that drives me up the wall.
I want to agree with that because it all makes sense, right? But I do think, well, number one, generalizations are really good to just to talk about the subjects and debate the NA versus EU and whatnot. But I think they come from a place that is rooted in reality. It's not just we're making something up. I think that the way that NA has played in the past and the ways that they've learned the game have been in that optimal framework, right? I mean, Sean, your teams were very flowy. They were very, very flowy in CS. You might disagree with that, but that's always the Cloud9 that won the major, the Optic that won E-League. These teams were always based in that let's play fundamental and the tactics will come second. And I think that is still true, even for V1, even for Cloud9 and the rest of it. Well, not necessarily every single team, but I think that mindset is still true. So I'm not against the generalization.
The way that I tend to think about it is less to do with large amounts of utility and more about whether people have very strict execs and large set play plans. Because when I'm thinking about like Liquid and Fnatic as well, they don't tend to begin the rounds with by being very default heavy at the beginning and trying to figure out what their opponents are doing, gain information, and make a reactive decision off of that. They tend to come into the round with a game plan. And that might change on the fly, but they come into it with a plan of what they want to do on their attack or their defensive round, especially Fnatic, who like to be proactive on defense and then have a lot of really fast exec kind of plays on attack too. That to me puts you in the realm of tactical, not necessarily the fact that you have utility, but because you have such a set plan going into the round. Whereas I think that even contrasting that to a team like V1 that does have a large amount of utility, they tend to approach the game in a bit more of a, we'll start with a default, we'll figure something out, and then we'll use our utility to pivot into a play.
I
you
just
think they have a lot of set
agree.
plays?
I think
I think they do on defense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that has to be a part of it, right?
Sure.
But even on attack, they had, on all maps, they have a number of rounds where they have an exact idea in mind. They're going to hit this site. Jammies is already working into position for post-plant lineup. Effie's is already working into position. They plant the spike. They have a setup. They execute it.
Yeah, they did do a lot.
I mean, they do a lot of that.
V1 is similar to Fnatic, and I think Sentinels is similar to Liquid. And I think Sentinels is better than Liquid. I think Fnatic is better than V1. I think both teams had like difference of styles between who they sent to the event. And I don't know. The individual players from Sentinels came up really big, and you could tell it busted Fnatic's protocols. Like Sick in showers unbind. He was single-handedly, like you said, stopping Boaster and who was the Sky? Mystic?
Unbind, it's Magnum.
So, I mean, Sick was just challenging them. He was just dropping the boombot, pre-turning from the flash, but that's all protocol stuff. Fnatic's going to go back home and create a new protocol so that way a race can never do that ever again to them. Like, and then they'll go from that game plan and they'll create a new protocol when something else beats them, right? But I don't like that individual style. Seems like it scares me against certain EU teams that can adapt quicker, because it looked like it took Fnatic a long time to adapt in that game.
Is that not one of the benefits, though, of playing more individually? Like a team like Sentinels that are trying to play as flexibly and reactively as possible. One of the advantages is that you can make those changes from a round-by-round basis, because it's based on individual players recognizing that rather than having to come up with a whole new protocol or game plan.
So the problem is an example would be like this round where they pushed out Hookah earlier, where it was like Zoms dropping the smoke suck out Hookah, and Fnatic is like stuck back there with the Raze. I think it was Doma. And then Durka comes up, stands on the side, and it's like just a free kill for Zoms. Like, that is a horrible early round protocol by Fnatic that will definitely be changed at the next tournament. And if it's changed, what happens in that scenario is Zoms has wasted 2 pieces of utility. They've got nothing for it, and now the round starts. So it's just slight protocol changes. And yes, the reactive team does have that going for them. But the more time goes on and the more protocols are created by these teams that are tactical, I think those teams win in the long run.
Okay. I think one way to put it is that reactive style can come by grinding the tactical style.
Yeah.
Right.
In the form of protocols and whatnot. And
I'm sorry, I want to say also, like, I don't think Sentinels is like all reactive. I think they have insane strats. Like, I'm kind of just going with like the easy narrative thing right now, just because it's very hard to go into depth. But they mainly play a lot of reactive style. But you can tell in their setups they've really ironed out everything. So to say that they're only a reactive team is completely unfair to them.
Oh yeah,
and
they have a shit ton
defensively.
of protocols.
Defensively, they have. I mean, you watch them run a different setup round after round after round after round. It's not random. They're not. I mean, it's which is to my. I guess my wider point is that it's like, yes, we do need these generalizations for the purpose of discussion as it simplifies things. But I think that the generalizations that had been established kind of need to go out the window at this point, because the regions have too many teams that approach the game in too many unique ways that these generalizations just simply aren't apt anymore.
Yeah.
Like the aggressive Brazil thing.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, we had Vikings were so fucking passive.
They were very
and still you still hear about how how aggro the team Vikings are, but they are not. They are super passive.
Yeah.
But guys, that's because they don't have protocols to deal with this utility that they're dealing from. Like, the other teams they're playing against have protocols to stop the aggression. And that's why I knew this aggressive style could get shut down. The utility in this game is very solid. So, when well, you guys are
Balla died.
I'm talking about,
Balla's dead. I was going to to piggyback off your point though about Vikings specifically, they do have a number of early round protocols and little traps that they have around the map that are specifically for the Brazilian teams that they're playing against. And I think that I watching back the Viking games within Brazil and internationally, that scene I think just became too insular. I mean, they seem to be far too practiced in dealing with how the Brazilian teams approach the game. And when they tried to change things like FRZ going to Jett being one, obviously the Yoru was just... I think
God, that would set Yoru back like 4 years.
We're going to have the rant about Brazil in a moment, though.
Okay, I won't go off. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll hold myself back. But it is a good point to piggyback off what Sean was saying. But I just think, so I guess my final thing would be, though, there need to be new generalizations because the old generalizations are shit. they just don't apply.
I could agree with that.
If you can't say... And just even based on the teams that were at Iceland, you can't say NA is the Puggy region and it's Sentinels and V1. You just can't say it. And at the same time, you can't say that EU, I think the teams they sent were just pure mega tactics. Like that is also not the case.
Yeah.
So it's time for the generalizations to change. I don't know what should the generalizations be?
I mean, I think they have to be team specific rather than.
I mean, yeah, that is the case.
But I want to go back to the core of the issue here, just to end, which is North America and Europe. The fans coming out of this are gonna be massively in favor. I can already tell, Sean, that at the beginning there where you're saying you think the EU depth is better, even though Shazam said the same thing when he was on stream, that he thinks that the overall depth of, say, the top 10 teams or something is better in Europe. What we saw in this tournament was that version 1 beat Liquid, Sentinels beat Fnatic, Sentinels beat Fnatic again in the finals, and the only European team to beat a North American team was Fnatic beaten version 1, and then the European teams clashed against each other. So from a fan's perspective, North America has been proven to be better. Like, not only that, but a team with a sub who came in was able to beat the top team coming out of EMEA. Like, holy fuck, North America must be better, right? So why are you repelling that argument that would just be given as a fan's perspective?
Just because I know it's just a best of 3. I mean, I don't know. I need a larger sample size, I think, like before I make that generalization that an entire region is better than another entire region. We saw 2 teams from one region versus 2 teams from another region. There's a lot of other teams in both of those regions. And that series was 2-1. And I mean, it could have gone either way. You know how boomed Liquid was in that Haven game. The Ascent game was 13-11 too. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not the type of person to make that type of statement about the regions, I guess. I don't know. It just seems like a little bit hyperbolic.
Okay. All right. Fair. Where do you think they'll be at when it comes to Berlin? Do you feel like we'll be able to say more conclusively after Berlin which region is ahead? Because I think at the moment it's fair to say Sentinels are clearly the best team in the world. And if you leave Sentinels out of the discussion, it gets muddy. It's like at that point, it's like, okay, you can have a serious debate about which region you think is better because version 1 did perform really well. Also, they had a sub. Who knows how the other teams would have performed from North America? Like another team might have performed better than they did.
I think
we had 3 teams from NA? 3 at Berlin?
I know 3 from NA, 4 from EMEA.
I thought that was champions. Is that?
No.
Oh no, that's Berlin. No, sorry, you're right. Yeah.
The problem with this discussion right now is that, as to Sean's point, the sample size is incredibly small, and I think if you want to try and argue for EU, you're going off of so you're then entering like the theoretical matchups that we haven't seen, maybe we'll never see, or are yet to see.
Like FPX is better than 100 Thieves. It's that kind of stuff.
Envy versus Ascend. Who fucking knows, man?
I think the regions are so close.
That's the realm you begin to enter.
The theoretical realm.
Right. And also to some extent then like the Scrimbucks realm, where Shazam is saying, well, Gambit, like, and I know even like
Version 1,
V1, where like CNET is nasty and Gambit are the best team and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even at that, Gambit are a team with known Scrimbucks in the past. So it's at that point you're so in the land of theory and speculation that I don't know. It kind of goes out the window, doesn't it? I mean, those teams didn't make it. We didn't see them. This was a really small tournament. We need a larger sample size to get to the actual answer. But for now, I think if you just want to default and say that NA are the best region because they have the best team, I don't necessarily agree that that's the case. But I think it's fair enough for now.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair if someone were to say that. Like, I'm not going to even argue that. Like, I'm not going to put my feet in the sand and say, like, no, EU is better. No, I actually think, like, what Sentinels proved here is that they're the best team in the world, right? And I think TenZ proved you have to call him the best player in the world because he is the top fragger, you know, like at the only LAN that we can use as our data. Like, so he has to be that person for now, right? And until another team proves that wrong in Berlin, then Sentinels is the best team in the world.
Okay. Balla sent me a message saying that his Discord crashed, so hopefully he's trying to get back. I don't know what has occurred. Maybe he's had to reinstall the entire program or something, but we'll carry on with the three of us for now, because the next topic that I want to jump into is, was Brazil overrated? If you take a look at this bracket and you take a look at how Brazil actually performed, Sharks bombed out. We predicted Sharks to bomb out because the teams that they were playing against were a higher caliber mid-tier opponents than they were, but the method in which they bombed out was, to me, very disappointing. Like 13-5 losses, I think, in both of those maps to Newturn that they lost, and then they go up against Crew and they kind of get smacked around there too. And then Vikings, Vikings you can understand if you just take it in a vacuum that we would predict them to lose to Sentinels, and we would also predict them to lose to Liquid. At least I would have coming into this. I know that you had a different opinion, Wyatt, slightly.
I mean, yeah.
But I think those are understandable losses. But overall, the big narrative coming out of this is that Brazil flumped. Yeah. Is that fair to say that they were overrated coming in?
Well, no, because they were like 8% favored, I remember, on that betting site. So saying they're overrated, no. People didn't rate them.
Right.
Those numbers, that inspires me to want to put some theoretical stock in them, and that's part of the reason why I predicted them to win a lot of the games. Despite them being underdogs in a lot of those matchups, I didn't think it was that they were such severe underdogs as I think the community perception would have put it.
Sure. So
I felt inclined to go for them in a lot of these games. And I don't think it's that they're overrated. I just think that what I was saying earlier, I think they were just really underwhelming and ill-prepared for what the rest of the world had to offer in regards to the gameplay from every other region. I also don't think that they had the ability to... They didn't make good adaptations in these games either. The Yoru thing was very strange. It seemed like they just threw something at the wall to see if it would stick. And that being they ran this comp on Ascent with the Yoru before, and we talked to them about it on the show, and they told us that it was a failed experiment, and then they went back to it in this game. Now, I think probably part of that had to do with the fact that they were scrimming Liquid so much before this, apparently. So I wonder if to some extent they felt like they showed their hand and they needed to mix something up, or if they felt like what their standard stuff was that they ran against Sen already just wasn't good enough, and they needed to do something to throw them off. But either way, this Yoru was not cutting the mustard, and I think one of the biggest problems for me is that, first of all, in this game, on their defensive half, I'll start with attack because they're on attack right now on screen. The only rounds on attack for them that were successful were their fast hits, because their utility in those fast hits was always good. They were doing some unique stuff with the Astra Wall, for instance. They were getting some value with the Yoru on the fast hits as being a distractive force in the back of a site that they could play off of, even though GTN just ran in and died every time. He at least was turning some heads. They were able to get in off some Astra
They were
utility.
Farming orbs with him. They had a clear plan of what they wanted to do on Ascent as well. He was getting both orbs every time.
Yeah,
his
but also,
ults were not good, though.
He was getting both orbs in the same way. He would go B main and then A main, and it would just let them know that they were A, and it was driving me fucking crazy, man. It would just telegraph where they were going. But also, within their own region, in a lot of the games that they play to qualify, they will have very passive defensive halves where they do have a lot of little set traps, but they are all based around GTN on Raze and FRZ on Phoenix.
Yeah.
And also... So like, for instance, on Ascent and Defense on the map we were just seeing, like, when someone taps the orb in A main, FRZ is ready to throw a molly over top, and GTN will swing from main. Like, they have setups that they do all across the map like that, in a passive defense because they expect the Brazilian aggression from some of the teams below them, like Game Landers, Fury, etc., that are just more inty. And I think that approach was just too insular to how Brazil was playing and the adaptation to come up on top within Brazil, but it was not good enough on the world stage. And aside from that, just some of the, like FRZ on Jett he's just not nearly as good as he is on Phoenix. His Jetts, I think, looked pretty uncomfortable for most of this. They weren't fragging very well. They did not look particularly confident in these games either. No. And also, in regards to defensive aggression, there was none of it. They never ran any of their aggressive plays. Again, I went back and watched some of the games from their qualifying run, and they're mixing it up constantly. They were pushing out A main and B main at the same time on defense constantly. A lot of aggressive plays.
You know what that means? That means they got absolutely boomed in their scrims.
Well, they did. So I did an interview with Sassy at the beginning. It was after their first loss to Sentinels, I believe. No, sorry, it was after their win against X10, I believe. I did the interview, actually. It was on the very first portion of the tournament. And they said that they had felt forced to mix things up. I believe the exact quote was something like, that's what a terrible journalist I am. But I think the quote was something like, we got pounded in scrims so hard, we just decided to mix things up. And that was them talking about their early games of the tournament. That's before we get to the Yoru. But I think the same perception held. Now, as for the scrims against Liquid, though, they apparently rolled Liquid in scrims.
Look at this Yoru. Look at this. He doesn't even clear Gen. He just pings one guy. He could have cleared Gen right there. He could have cleared so many things. He had no pathway. I don't know. I was disappointed in the Yoru pick as a Yoru player.
Didn't you say something like this has set Yoru back 6 months?
Yeah, I was just trolling though. I mean, you could see they just didn't really have any other ideas. And I played on these teams before. We go to EU, and you can get like boomed in these scrims, man. These EU teams are insane. The depth of that region is unreal tactically. So that's why I have faith from CS that the entire region is like playing off of each other and tactically. And they probably got wrecked in scrims, and they realized all their aggression isn't going to work, and they need a new plan because they don't want to lose, 13-3 like they have in every single scrim potentially. So they're trying new stuff, and then that never works either. So it's a lose-lose proposition.
The things that they tried to mix up though were strictly the agents. They played the players in the same positions, doing the same things, but with other agents. So there were no utility setups for anything. They were just standing in the same spots often. And I mean, just in that, I don't know. I'm pretty disappointed because I know that they're better than this, and I know that the region has more to offer as well.
For sure.
So I mean, honestly, I think that I'm gonna reinvest in my Brazilian stocks because they're at an all-time low.
He's doubling down.
This is a great time to buy. It's at an all-time low.
You hear that, guys? It's an all-time low. Buy.
It really is, though.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. Just on defense, they were just so passive. I mean, they on the one map on Ascent, they only on one round did they peak. Did they go into B main on defense for any level of aggression or map control? It was just so passive. It really, I mean, yeah, you can tell that they did get boomed in scrims. I mean, it does seem like that had affected them a lot.
But that in itself is an indication that they didn't or couldn't, like the inability to adapt to the multi-regional style of play is in itself a flaw, right? That isn't just something you can brush aside because it's going to crop up every time that they play at an international tournament. You're always going to have to adjust to better teams in that environment beforehand. If you think about what version 1 did, version 1 were apparently also getting clapped in scrims for online scrims. They gave up playing online scrims because they were getting beasted so much. And their players were tweeting about how much they were getting shit on by Gambit and by Ascend and those kind of teams. But yet they were still able to come out with good preparation and had done well enough in land scrims and had the right mentality to still alter the right things, learn from their failures, and enact it in the match properly. Those are two teams that went on a similar early path, and then one of them was able to still get success, and one of them was just didn't get any success, any level of it. There's still a flaw there in what they're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
maybe they didn't look into the opponents enough or something. I don't know.
That's where I think the trajectory of the region. I think that Brazil, after looking at this, I think a lot of the other regions were more similar than they were different. But Brazil had, I think the region's gameplay was just too insular. Like they had the reason they were so interesting. The teams were so interesting and the players in that region was because they did have a very unique approach throughout, really up until I think it's just this year that they've kind of that aggressive style stopped working, and the best teams like Vikings and Sharks, etc., the teams that were able to just nullify the previous best teams who were getting away with crazy aggression all the time and just insane aim, dominating the server, game landers, Furia players, etc. And I just don't think that enough. I think that due to those circumstances, the region was just a bit behind in the global meta.
Okay.
I mean,
well, then have they learnt enough at this event to be competitive in Berlin?
And you know what tells me why? Game Landers just picked up like a upcoming Astra only player, which tells me they are. I think the region is, they understand where they went wrong. If that's already the case, right? Like some of these comps were just so behind the times as well. Like just especially the one the Vikings were playing on Icebox.
Yes.
I mean, it was just, there was no way they were going to win with that. As soon as you saw it, you just knew that the game was over.
Yeah, I saw that too. What do you think the reason for that is? Is that because like, I don't know what, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch much of the region, but I have a lot of faith in Brazil, like moving forward, just from what I've seen in CSGO. Do you think that's because like the top teams in the region were just skill diffing the teams below that were using proper comps, and they just never felt the pressure of having to switch their comp? Like, what is the reason for that?
The dynamic in Brazil was that the top teams at the end of 2020 were skill diffing the others. They had really aggressive play, incredible talent, and would utility dump and do fast execs a lot. And the overwhelming amount of utility that's just flying at you at once, and then the people running at you with rifles was too much. But at the beginning of this year, Vikings has been the #1 team by learning how to absorb that aggression. But I don't think that necessarily, I don't think they were focused on meta compositions so much as just shutting down duelists. And they did that by using duelist utility. They did that by using the Raze and the Phoenix utility to counter flash and to use like the boombot as people were approaching, or the nade or whatever, to stop the kind of aggression from the other teams and break up the site hits. I don't think though what I think Brazil was lacking was one team to do it properly, to take the new comps and do it really well, to teach the other people, oh shit, this is actually really powerful right now. Because Vikings were dominating. They won Masters 1. They had an insane win record across Masters 2 as well. But yeah, it is weird to say that, because that's the same situation for Newturn. Newturn didn't drop a map on their qualification process in Korea, but they still did it by using meta compositions, whereas Brazil didn't. And I'm not really sure why they diverged. You know, why did Brazil not look at other regions and see what was successful and incorporate those? Perhaps because they didn't have to, perhaps because they were so focused on just countering the aggression, and that they felt was all that mattered. I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's so bizarre, because I had faith in them as a region just because I know they're insane aimers, and they're just really, I thought they would have like some insane tactics. I'm not gonna lie, because the region is just full of like super hardworking teams from CS that would always push the envelope tactically. Yeah, it was a disappointing showing, but I agree with Wyatt. I think that there's no shot this region isn't like a contender in the future.
It is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. And I think this was probably the best wake up call for them that they could have. And I know along with every other region, there's a huge roster shuffle happening. in Brazil as well.
Yeah.
All the top teams are making moves, which I think for some of the teams in that region as well, probably long overdue, honestly.
Yeah.
They'd kind of just been riding with the same players they've had for, I mean, in Game Lander's case, for a year.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that people are going to, I mean, if the topic was Brazil overrated, I think Brazil is about to be really underrated coming into the next tournament. I think a lot of people are going to write them off. But I would hope at least that this is going to be quite the wake-up call as to what needs to be done.
They though did not compete with the top North American and European teams, particularly in the matches that they actually played. However, Newturn did. And so my follow-up question from this is should Korea be considered a serious contender now? To the point where we're talking about them perhaps as the third strongest region in and of themselves, with it being like, okay, Sentinels, North America, Fnatic with Europe, and then Newturn in Korea. Do you think it's at that kind of level where it's going to be replicable in the future and Korea is going to be a serious contender in this game to be able to win tournaments, win titles?
Yes, I do. I think the question is still one that we've talked about in the past that I'm going to return to, which is the matter of team personnel. Are there enough top level players in Korea in the game right now to have enough teams to be a serious contender? Because if the question is Korea a serious contender, obviously like they can have Newturn are a serious contender.
But Newturn didn't drop a map while qualifying. They're clearly
exactly. That's my point.
Else.
So there needs to be more teams, and I think that requires more top level personnel. And especially if we're entering an area where already the established older TAC FPS guys are considering retirement, and one already has. There's going to be a lot of reliance on the fresh talent coming up and them being able to take Korea to that position. It looks like they have the potential. I think it's just another matter of time.
What's your thoughts there, Sean?
I'm a firm believer in the Korean region after what I've seen.
Balla's back.
I think.
Hello?
That's good, dude. Welcome back. I like how he conveniently dipped during the whole like defend Fnatic segment. I was just on an island all by myself.
I'm excited for that too. Unfortunate, bro.
Okay. I'm just kidding.
Unlucky, I guess. Unlucky. No, it turns out that Discord is down in the Northeast, so I just connected to a VPN in Texas.
That is really weird.
You guys.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, what we just talked about Brazil a little bit, but I'm afraid we've skipped over that topic as well. We're now talking about Korea. I was asking Sean's opinion on whether Korea is a serious contender right now and should be considered in the future as like potentially the third best region in Valorant.
I think right off the bat, I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we can say
you don't think they're the
region.
Third best? Who's the third best?
No, third best. NA, EU, and then it has to be Korea, huh?
Unless you like separate like CIS.
No, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. EU, yeah, it has to be Korea then. I'd consider them better than what Brazil showed for sure. But maybe depth in Brazil slightly more. I don't know. I'd say third best then when you actually rank it out. Well done.
Okay, but I think there is also a difference between being the third best region and being seriously capable of taking tournaments, right? Like you could be the third best region and just getting shit on. That is a reality that we could be in, is that the third best regions are just crap compared to North America and Europe because of player base size, interest in the game, history in CS, investment in Valorant. Like all of these factors could, in theory, create just EU and NA are better. What's your feel, Sean? Is Korea going to be good and in a short-term kind of manner as well?
I'm not super excited on them short term, but I will say this. They are the most innovative region, and they're very, very good at working off each other on these executes and using abilities to overwhelm players. Better than any other region in my eyes. They're lacking in other very key areas, though. I can see their communication breakdowns. I can see they kind of falter in the late game a little bit sometimes when they run out of plans. They're not very good at mid-gaming. So, for example, like how Sentinels pushed out Hookah, got that pick, and kind of flustered Fnatic. I actually think NewTurn's worse than that. So they have a lot to do in those areas, but because of the fact they're innovative in a game like this with constant changes to the maps, to the agents, to the metas, they will always have impact in these tournaments and could knock out any region, right? But once they land what I'm talking about, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Yep. I'm telling you, like, it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen soon, but give it like 6 months to a year. We might start seeing some crazy results coming out of the Korean region.
2022 VCT champions.
Yeah,
here we go.
Maybe
2022 VCT champions.
I mean, honestly, not a bad time frame to work off, to be honest.
Yeah, they would have what, two teams there, possibly 3 if one of them was able to win Masters 3 in that same year as well. So, okay.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
For me, the biggest thing is looking at how much NewTurn was better than the other teams in their region, and not just the fact that they didn't lose a map, but also the manner in which NewTurn was better. NewTurn, to me, was the only team in the region that was not playing an extraordinarily basic type of Valorant, which was we take an area of the map with utility and immediately exec off of that. NewTurn at least had some level of, we're going to slowly hold, wait, try and info starve a little bit, and then we'll go into an exec. And even that was a bit too predictable compared to the tier 1 teams at Iceland. But I think the more experience they get, and especially coming out of this tournament, NewTurn's going to get a lot better at that, and hopefully that bleeds into the other teams as well. The thing I'm worried about, though, is that when your veterans leave, those are the kind of people that should be teaching the young people that kind of stuff. The young people can be creative and innovative in my eyes. Like, that makes sense to me, the way that I would model new players coming into the game that are fresh and have seen the success of Vision Strikers and know all the set plays. Those are the instantly observable things that you can see in the Korean game, and the things that I think new players will latch onto. What is much more difficult to be able to get a handle on is we're going to run a default and play the information game here. We're going to try and actually we're going to try and condition the opponent so that 3 rounds down the line, when we do a fast play, it's not instantly counterable, because we've already used these pieces of utility as part of our default anyway, so they can't tell we're taking this area of the map. That, I think, is something that NewTurn have started to do, and they're doing it reasonably well, but they're not on the same level as like a Sentinels. Of course, they're not. Not many teams are. But no other team in Korea is anywhere close to doing that kind of stuff, at least not at the top level. So
you have no faith in like Vision Strikers? You don't think
Vision Strikers the thing is that for them, perhaps Glow's impact was more to do with the set plays, because that's how, hey, I'm really ignorant on CS 1.6 history and that kind of stuff, but from my understanding, the old Korean teams were super strat heavy. And so maybe the veteran presence was part of what led them down that path. And so maybe I've got it twisted in my head, and the new blood will actually help kind of get them back on the more flowy way of how to play, which is what they desperately need. But I'm kind of concerned a little bit, because when you have a bit of what could potentially be called brain drain in Korea right now, with Glow retiring, Solo and Perry both considering retirement as well, and you just have the Korean answer of, well, let's put fresh, hungry talent in there. Unless they transition into coach roles and really take away the right lessons from this, I don't know whether it's going to be short-term results, or even like they could win in 2022. It might be a long process, but they're still in a good position. I don't want to put them down, but like competing and beating North American and European teams consistently, I think is still going to be tough for this region unless they make that shift.
That opening game, though, in every tournament, the opening game for whoever has to play a team from the Korean region when there's no footage on them is going to be terrifying. Yeah, because they could just fluke you on the pistol, the first gun, the second gun, and then we switch halves and we do it all over again because there's no footage. You don't know what to expect. Yeah. So like they could fluke the first win every single time with this play style. That's why I have faith in them. Is like once they get down that other stuff, and it's going to take time. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not happening overnight, and I think people that think it will are they don't understand how difficult it is to do those things.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
worry about the infrastructure as well in terms of actually getting decent practice and being challenged at the
that's
highest
a
of
good
high
point too.
levels, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons why EU is so damn good is because they have so many good teams playing. For Korea, their open qualifier had 24 teams total,
Jesus.
like total. You know, so
Wait,
that's
what?
literally the
Sorry?
teams that want to compete. Yeah,
Is
their
that
open
true?
qualifier.
The
I
open
didn't know
Didn't have
that.
many.
I didn't
Their
know
open
that.
What?
qualifier did
Open
not have
as
many
in anyone
teams.
immortal plus
Yes.
to play in that, right?
They had 24?
Let me
Wow.
look up the exact number.
That is like
But it is very
mind-blowingly
low.
small. I can't. I almost think
That
you must
is
have made a
outrageous.
mistake
Yeah.
there, Balla. If that ends up being true, that has boggled my mind.
That's insane. That's an insane statistic. That kind of changes
Valorant.
everything.
And
Because
if-
yeah, that's why NA teams
Yeah.
boot camp in EU. They boot camp in EU because you can get scrims against like, you know, the 30th best EU team, and you can book out your practice schedule every single day as an NA team in EU and CS:GO, and probably the same thing in Valorant. Because the
Mhm.
depth of the region is so good that you don't even need to play teams in the tournament to get good success. Like to have successful practices. Whereas in NA, if you want successful practice, you need like the top 10. You know?
Balla's doing some arithmetic. He's got his abacus out.
Carry the one, divide by
28
2.
teams.
28. That's still pretty
28.
low.
Are you sure the bracket didn't cut off or something? Are there seriously only 28 teams? 140
It says
players decided to sign
Wikipedia
up.
Preliminary round. Yeah, 28 teams. I just sent it to Kurt in the Valorant channel. If he wants to pull it up.
Crazy.
But
That's an insane
That
statistic.
to me is
is-
like, how the fuck did Newturn do so well if there's only 140 people
I mean,
who want to compete?
hopefully that inspires some more Korean gamers to want to switch to Valorant. The fact that Newturn looked like they had a legit shot.
Stage 2 challenges, preliminary rounds. But if
That
these
makes me think they're
teams-
further away than I thought they were.
Have these teams
Honestly,
not
like that's
qualified
kind of scary.
already?
no,
That's-
this is the
There's definitely no
preliminary
kind
round.
of stage before this.
That
I'll
it's-
look it
I
up
mean,
on valor.gg as well.
How
but
do you
I'm
get better if
pretty
there's
sure
no one to
not.
practice against?
How do you get more preliminary than the preliminary round?
I don't
I don't
know.
think you can.
They could play. Their pings are probably fine outside, right? Like Southeast Asia. I wonder what their ping is to like
Is
these
this-
other teams.
Did they only allow the top teams from Challengers 1 into Challengers 2 or something?
No, I've never heard of some of these teams.
Well, I mean,
I've
you
never
could find
seen
the you could find the challengers one.
Yeah, what
bracket
about
to make
Challengers
sure.
1? Kurt, if you scroll up and go to Challengers 1, what about that as well? This really has blown my mind because I knew that Korea had a smaller player base, but I didn't think it was this small. Like, that to me is, it's almost miraculous that Newturn did as well as they did.
Yeah.
If you're pulling from such a small player base, how?
It makes it even more insane. I think that they have players like Lakia in the region even. Like,
Dude, how does someone like him find that Killjoy spam on Haven and no one knows about it? Like, what?
Yeah, it's
I didn't
not
know
much
about
more
that.
For,
How many teams are there here?
Challengers
Look, one of these Group H has only got 3 teams in it. So there's no way that they had
There's
more teams that they could have
31
put in,
teams
right?
in Challengers 1.
oh my god,
That's incredible, actually.
that's crazy.
That's genuinely incredible.
I want to keep an eye on it and see the next tournament. See if it improves
yeah,
because of this.
good
this.
question.
And we were talking about on Plat chat that, especially Avast was talking about this too, because we come from Overwatch. We recognize like early Overwatch as well. The top, they were a team of Europeans, but they lived in North America, so whatever. But Envious went over and they played against the Korean teams in Korea, and they won that tournament. The first time that a foreign team had ever won on Korean soil in an esports tournament. And it sparked this big drive for Korea to get much better. And I think that this could be somewhat similar, even though it's not like a blow to their pride in the same kind of way. This combination of success, but a limited amount of success. They didn't just dominate. They're not the best straight out of the gates, but they're not terrible either. They have some serious potential. I think this was a very good catalyst kind of performance from Newturn to make other people inspired. You need some level of success to be inspired, but you need something to aspire towards as well. And I think this was pretty perfect what Newturn was able to accomplish. Top 3 is just way beyond what I was expecting from Newturn. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to go into was actually, you know what? I think we can save the other stuff for another day because we're already heading towards 3-hour podcast right now.
Where are we at?
We have what, sorry? 2:23?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, that's actually, that is actually.
I actually have a hard out.
When do you,
okay. I have to leave by 11:30.
Okay, well, I think now is a good time then to wrap up and summarize because
minutes.
there's a lot of roster moves and stuff like that we could go through as well, but we still have next week that we can address those kind of things, so we can cover those at that point as well. I wanna kind of finish by just going through the best players of Reykjavik. Just a short 10-minute segment to close this out, which is who were the best players in your mind? They don't all necessarily have to be like from the most winning team, just players that really stood out to you, even from the bottom level teams that we haven't talked about too much. Who were some of the big players that made a splash in Iceland? Wyatt, I want to start with you because you've always got the eyes on like upcoming talent and stuff.
Well, first of all, Lakia. I was excited to see Lakia going into this. I thought within a lot of, especially in the final games of the qualifier, like the one where they beat Vision Striker specifically, he looked really good. I was interested in seeing him, and he exceeded my expectations in this tournament. I thought he was just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah,
he was an outrageously good player. That would probably be number one for me. I'm trying to think of some people on some of the lower teams. I mean, despite Sharks having a rough showing, I thought Prozen looked really good. He was still having some solid games. He was even in the games that they were losing, he was like by the numbers, he was the statistical anomaly for Sharks.
Right.
In a lot of those games, he was still playing pretty well. I'm trying to think. You guys could give some. I'm trying to think about the lower teams.
Yeah, just
Addy
shout
Ben?
up.
Adafin, yeah, that guy, it was insane.
Yeah. By the way, I love that everyone calls him Patifan. I think his name is Patapan, but either that or I've been calling him wrong for years in Overwatch as well. If you really like the way that Patapan plays, you're a Patifan yourself. But,
Okay.
Yep. Get him off the show. I will say, another player that I thought was pretty solid was Munchkin on Crazy Raccoon.
Okay.
I thought he was definitely the difference maker for that team. And in the maps that they were holding close, he was having some good pop-off moments, but also he was leading the charge on attack for Crazy Raccoons, and that he would always take really early map control. He was using his utility well to gain a lot of space for Crazy Raccoon. I thought he was very impactful in that way. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't have him, their attack sides would have gone way worse. He was really doing an excellent job clearing space and providing them with room to work with on the executes. I thought he was really crucial for Crazy Raccoon, who had a reasonably good showing for Japan.
I thought Zalm's Astra was unreal. I thought it was so good. I thought his how quick he was to like pop utility on execs and like just the awareness of what was going on was really good. And that's not going to show on the stat page. And then also Durka. Durka was really, really, really good, other than the Sentinels game.
Yeah.
Effie's?
Yeah, Effie's was nuts.
His clutches down the line were unbelievable. He kind of filled that, Sova clutch and roll that we missed with not having 100 Thieves and Hiko. We didn't have any Hiko clutches, so Effie's got to fill that role a little bit, and it was really fun to watch.
But another player that I know, if Avast were here, he would be shouting his name to the hilltops, which is Link from Liquid. Link had a really good tournament. He wasn't by the numbers the best person on Liquid. I'm giving a vast take here. Okay. I know that Scream gets the most frags, but it doesn't matter. The Link's kills that he was getting were just always high impact, and a lot of his kills also came from multiple in succession. He was doing an excellent job anchoring a lot of the sites and a lot of the post plants. He was the man in the key position to find like 2-3 kills, and it was always a round-winning play that he would make for Liquid. He just outright won Liquid so many rounds. He was really impressive. I thought he did an excellent job.
He went full Master Roshan. He's the only reason that Liquid, like after day one or after they lost to V1, really ended up doing anything, right? It was because he came out as a new person.
Oh yeah, and this play was just the judge, by the way. The true MVP. The judge.
This was so dirty. What about that Yumpy ace in A main? God damn it.
I hate the judge and everything it stands for. It's an untradeable weapon and it needs to leave. Another player I think that you could put in a similar category to Link was Mystic, too, for Fnatic, who I think had a really good tournament, especially considering I believe it was his first LAN event, though that could be incorrect. I think it was Mystic's first LAN event. He comes out, and even though he had, I think, one match where he didn't perform as well, everywhere else he was extraordinarily consistent and putting up much larger numbers than you would expect from him normally playing online. So I think that's a big thing to look for in the future too, is that guy's success. And then, of course, TenZ. I mean, we already talked about him earlier.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
but,
I mean, we could, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you have to mention him, though, too, because it wasn't just that he was incredible, but it was also that a lot of people had serious doubts about him as well, because he hadn't been as good when he hadn't, I don't know, he hadn't had that tier 1 CS experience where you knew he was going to perform at LAN. And he had already been a bit sloppy playing online with Sentinels before. So it felt like a recipe for it being really make or break of whether or not TenZ fit into this team at LAN. And my God, did he make this team. I mean, he made this team at LAN. It was just nuts.
Did he make the team or did the team make him? Because it felt like they were propelling this man
to
levels that I don't think we've seen, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
To wrap the best players.
Yep. I think that's put a little.
Any other pressing? Is there anything that the people just need us to talk about?
Need us to talk about?
Yeah,
I don't know. Have you thought about anything?
No, I don't know. Any like other pieces of news that are just so insane? We literally have. If we don't give our opinions, there's going to be outrage.
The other pieces of news that are happening this week that we are going to cover next week as well are like Solo and Perry considering retirement. We talked about that a little bit already as well. The G2 and Ascend are apparently announcing their teams today, but we've already talked about those in the past. We're not really considering those to be we're not expecting them to be any different from what the reports have been in the past anyway. Gameland has added Belky, which is, again, the Astra player that you were talking about earlier that was important to go for. And then T1 dropped Dazed, or reported to have dropped him amid more drama and that kind of stuff.
Week.
So, yeah, the Pulitzer Prize.
Next week topics.
Those are some next week topics for sure. And we'll kind of wrap that kind of stuff up when we go on next week. Sean, thank you so much for joining us as well again. And yeah, I'm sure that people in the comments as well, you got to leave a little comment if you. We're not. Oh no, we're not done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we skipping something? Like, what's going on here? Jeez.
Skipping something there.
I always forget, and it's the most important topic of the week, and I apologize profoundly. If we had skipped this, the people would have fucking rioted. It's Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Dude, it's so dark in here. I can't see anything. What is that glowing? Oh, it's Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Yeah, there it is.
That is amazing.
There it is. Now, I think there are a lot of candidates for this weekly award. Obviously, given that the tournament happened that we talked about.
Oh yeah, that big tournament.
Yeah, that happened. I think there's a lot of worthy recipients. I even considered giving it to the judge, but. Listen, the judge was very impactful over the course of the tournament.
VALORANT a child game.
The judge was incredibly influential over the week of the tournament. So many 2Ks, 3Ks, and give 5Ks. It to the judge. I think the judge played very well. Not going to give it to the judge though. I am going to give it. It's going to TenZ. I mean, TenZ was just outrageous, and there's the inner conflict was TenZ versus Shazam.
Okay,
and I bounced back and forth on both because both provided extreme amounts of value to the team that won the biggest tournament in Valorant so far. And I think it's hard to argue it's not one of the two of them, but this was probably TenZ's best tournament ever, and it was at the biggest tournament. He persevered despite a lot of the potential doubt surrounding him on the team. Not only because of just past performances at CS lands, but also where Sentinels were at just before this.
Yeah.
There was a bit of shakiness in their qualifying route. There were people who were expecting him not to show up, and he did in an astounding way. I mean, that honestly, what pushed me over the edge, because I was even still thinking about it during the show, was that stat that you had mentioned, Sean, about the first bloods with the 19-2.
Yeah.
I mean,
think about what that means. He's creating openings like into bomb sites so many times.
The value of that's just outrageous.
Yeah, it is,
I mean,
isn't
that it's hard to argue against that stat. So for those reasons, it's just got to go to TenZ. He is the MVP of this tournament. In regards to his individual play, he was simply on another level from everyone else. And there it is. That's what it is.
Yep. Well deserved, I think. A spectacular player. He's now, I don't know, one of the biggest stories at the moment this week in terms of all of esports, with the buyout price and all of that kind of stuff coming off the back of it and his incredible performance. So, yeah, he's also got Wyatt's weekly award. I'm sure he'll really be excited about that this week. That'll mean a lot to him.
More prestigious than even winning Iceland, honestly.
He got the science award, the glow-in-the-dark science award.
It glows in the dark. I didn't realize it glue in the dark until I saw it right now.
It glows in the dark.
Yeah, I've never seen it glow in the dark, so I don't know whether it does.
Well, it's because you have to put it up to a light, let it charge up, and then you put it in the dark, and then it glows.
It's been in the light forever.
It's
in the studio light.
You gotta really put it under some light.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us here on this recap of Masters 2 Reykjavik as well. I want to talk a little bit about people who've been members to our channel too. Please go and subscribe to the channel as well. We had a big subscription drive while we were doing our co-streams, but if you're watching this and you enjoy watching the VOD content, then sub. If you are a member to the channel and you become a member to the channel while we are doing this VOD content rather than live stream, we'll be doing a shout out to anybody at the end of these episodes. So rather than doing them during the live stream, if you decide to welcome to member in between one of our weekly episodes, we'll do a shout out to you at the end as well. So just putting that out into the world too. We'll work on extra stuff like emotes and badges and that kind of stuff in the future, and maybe some exclusive content. We'll see how it progresses. But for now, just thank you to everybody who is supporting the co-stream and supporting the channel as well. We very much do appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled broadcast from now on. Goodbye.